I'd like to call the Lane County Board of Commissioners regular meeting for Tuesday, January 30th, 2018 to order. And the first item of business is adjustments to the agenda. And I've got one adjustment to the agenda I'd like to make, and that is we're going to move item 5, employee recognition, up to immediately after adjustments to the agenda. The employees involved need to get back to what they normally are doing in their workday, seeing it's a very small department and program, so we need to finish that. Then we'll move on to public comment after that. I will note that there is a 10 o'clock time certain item that has outside folks coming in for, and I will hold to that 10 o'clock time certain. If we need to, we will suspend public comment and go back to public comment after that 10 o'clock time certain. Any other adjustments to the agenda? And I want to make one quick announcement so that people are aware. The hearing for the appeal on the aerial spray initiative was moved from 1:30 Friday to 9 a.m. Friday morning, and it's in room 307 of the courthouse for those that want to know. So with that, I want to move on to item 5, which is employee recognition, and I'll turn this over to Mr. Mokrzycki to recognize some really good work that was done.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to welcome up to the table here our Senior Animal Welfare Officer, Bernard Perkins. You want to come up? Bernard, Office Assistant 2, Rachel German. Rachel, come on up. And Extra Help, Sydney Yardley. These three individuals from Animal Services are here today for a recognition. And I want to start by saying that the story of Lane County is a story of resiliency. Overcoming scarcity of resources to deliver high-quality services that meet the needs of our community with a can-do attitude. And our Animal Services staff epitomizes, I think, that can-do attitude and approach in Lane County. And specifically today, we're recognizing these three individuals for an event that occurred on October 16th, 2017. Lane County Animal Services and Green Hill Humane Society rescued 95 small dogs. You may have seen this story reported in the local media from a home in western Lane County. It was one of the most severe cases of animal hoarding in Lane County in 25 years. Officer Perkins, Ms. German, and Ms. Yardley were instrumental in conducting the investigation that led to the rescue, coordinating with Green Hill, and working with the owner to get consent for the removal of the dogs. The dogs were turned over to Green Hill. At least one more was born, as I understand, on the way to Green Hill, and then more in the coming weeks that followed. The animals received medical evaluation, treatment, and rehabilitation before adoption. Half of the dogs were moved to other shelters in the region, and all of the dogs that remained at Green Hill have already been successfully adopted. So this went from a really challenging, difficult, tragic situation to, I think, a largely positive one, thanks to the outstanding efforts of these three individuals. And I think the board certainly appreciates the limited resources that we have to invest in animal services. We really have, I mean, this is it here. And but they do incredible work. It's amazing to me, the responsiveness and the amount of work that this small team does for such great need in our community. And so I'm really proud to have you here today and to recognize the great work that you did in this one severe case, but every single day that you serve here in Lane County. We thank you for your efforts. So we have if you want to pass this down to Bernard, and this one is for Rachel. Thank you so much for your outstanding work and in this particular case.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I just, on behalf of the board, I want to thank you also. And I hope folks are okay with us taking this first because, like Mr. Mokrzycki said, this is our animal services staff. While they're here, we don't have animal services happening out in the county. So we have to get them back to work so they can do the great work they did. But bravo for handling such a challenging situation. It's always very difficult when you're dealing with people and animals, and what you guys did was wonderful for the end result for the animals. So thank you very much.
Thank you, and I just want to recognize Michael Johns, who is the division manager, who's here, and Dan Hurley, our interim public works director, also here in the audience.
Thank you all.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
So after that brief delay, then we'll move on to item 2, public comments. And this is where folks can sign up and they get 3 minutes to address the board. And I will call the person that is signed up and the next person so you know, so you can kind of get ready to come on up here and we can try and keep things moving. I'm going to be a little bit more strict about the 3 minutes today, hopefully, so we can try and get everybody in before time certain so you don't have to wait through that. So first person signed up is Rob Dickinson, followed by Deborah McGee.
Good morning, Chair Bozovich and Commissioners. I'm Rob Dickinson from Cottage Grove, Oregon. As you know, we've been here before. I've been here before. It's not like we really like being here. It's actually really hard to get here every week or as often as we do. But we feel that this is the avenue for us to come and at least currently try to work and continue to move things forward in terms of the aerial spray initiative. We were very heartened to learn, I guess, on the work session of the 9th that there would be, at the commissioners meeting of the 9th, that there would be a work session. But we were very disappointed when we learned afterwards that it wasn't going to be scheduled for over 4.5 months from that date. We were actually expecting, as I think Commissioner Sorensen indicated when the scheduling was discussed, we were expecting a timely work session. We were hoping that it would happen in January or February, not in May and not after the election. For a number of reasons. And there was also some confusion. We weren't here at the time of the scheduling. That was after the public comments and later in the day. And there were some items of confusion. One, I think all of the proponents and all of the chief petitioners believe that we want this to move forward now, not later, not in May. On referring the ordinances. We have a letter that's been given to all the commissioners. I'll have another copy both for staff and for the commissioners, where all the chief petitioners have said that they want action to start immediately and not to wait, and to not wait for after the legal processes resolve. That could take some time. It's very uncertain. And right now, even if we were put on the May ballot, we've lost 4 months of a 6 months campaign, and that's not helpful at all. The commissioners have raised a number of points that they would like to discuss before they could refer it. And if that's the case, and if there's a lot of things to discuss, then we should start that process now and not wait until late May. Our understanding, when we've seen other work sessions scheduled, when a commissioner has something of considerable interest to them, a work session is typically scheduled within a month or maybe 6 weeks of when the interest is raised, and not 4 months. So we think that if the commissioners were serious about looking at referral, they would start now or soon. And we view the new ordinances that we propose as distinct, separate things. That's why we wrote them as separate things, and that we don't want them to be commingled in terms of the outcome of the initiative. We want the ordinances to be acted upon right now, as soon as possible. It was raised that perhaps if the charter amendments went forward after the judge's ruling, that then there's a possibility that both would be on the ballot. And we're comfortable with that. We think voters can handle that and would make good choices. But if that's a big concern for the commissioners, then refer our ordinances now. And if the charter amendments make it onto the ballot, there is an option to withdraw the referral. Was that my timer?
Yes, it is.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Deborah McGee, followed by Jerry Rust.
My name is Deborah McGee, and I've lived in the county for 33 years. Yo, county commissioners, I wonder who you are. You take the people's wishes and you throw them so far. You won't stand up for what the people need, make us bend down low, make us have to plead. When we're only trying to say, stop poisoning us, stop poisoning us. Can't stand it this way. We want clean air and we want clean water. You stand in our way, not doing what you oughter. Have you been bribed? Have you been bought out? make us want to cry, make us want to shout. Mr. J. Bosovich, the register guards say, about 20,000 timber dollars coming your way. Mr. Williams taking the money. Mr. Lycan taking dollars too. Looks like they just about bought the whole crew. About 8 years ago, you redrew the lines. Gerrymandering districts makes you win every time. For 27 years, I lived in West Lane. Woke up one morning and it wasn't the same. Now say I live in East Lane. How can that be? Oh yeah, gerrymandering all over the country. Democracies say let the people lead the way, not profits and greed. We all got to concede this experiment is failing. The people are ailing. Inequality is growing and the people be knowing. Environment's going down, gonna take us with it too. We got no choice. We got to do what we got to do. Make a work schedule happen right away, not waiting until May. Why you play the games you play? Jerk us around while you have your way. You may thwart us today, but it won't stay this way. The people will be free from aerial spray. The people will be free from aerial spray. The people will be free from aerial spray.
No applause, please. Jerry Rust, followed by Michelle Holman.
Morning, Commissioners. Jerry Rust from Lower Siuslaw. Yesterday, I got an email from Chairman Bosovich, and here's what it said. Actually, it was a survey asking residents, how can we improve Lane County? And the first question is, what is the most important to accomplish in the next 3 years for a safe, healthy Lane County? Now, I submit to you that many people who live in your rural districts, for them, the most important safety issue is to be free from aerial spray. Not meth, not cops, not lack of law enforcement, not fire. It's that spray. It's that helicopter coming down the valley, the drift that settles in and moves into our water, vegetables, even into the tissues of men, women, and children. If you want to be anything but hypocritical about this survey, you need to take this issue serious now, not in 4 months, not after the election. Discuss it now. You know, the right to petition is enshrined in our Constitution. It's the First Amendment. You may as well have said, let them eat cake last week after the hearing. Do something now. You're getting paid the big money. It's time for you to act. Come on, Commissioners, move on this issue. Thank you.
Please, no applause. Michelle Holman, followed by Carol Scheer.
Michelle Holman, Deadwood, Oregon. Representative government is failing us because it's been invaded by corporate decision makers. Corporate profits are elevated above the needs and the wishes and the safety and the health of area residents. And it's unconscionable that corporations, big corporations, enjoy more rights and privileges, more protections than we the people have to protect ourselves from the harms of corporate activity in our communities. And most often, corporate heads don't even live here. They don't live in our communities. They don't endure the harms that we must suffer because this occurs where we live, not where they live. They just enjoy the profits. This country was founded on a hierarchy with the people as sovereign at the top. We elect government. One of the charges government was given by the people was to charter corporations for a limited time, for a specific purpose, and that purpose had to benefit the community. That's what the country's founded on. That has been inverted. corporations sit at the top, sending lobbyists to make law with government. Government enforces that law, and the people are now down here. We've been relegated to the status of consumers. We just buy the stuff. That has to change. And we're the people doing that. That's what community rights is all about. It's empowering people to challenge unjust law and replace it with laws that protect us, just laws. Yeah, we have a spray problem. But not only do we have a spray problem, we have a democracy problem. The system really doesn't care what the people want or need, and that is clear. You just ask the FAHA people, the Freedom from Aerial Herbicide Alliance people, if the system cares about them. And your jobs as government officials is to work for us, the people. You may very well use sprays, you may think sprays are fine, but you are supposed to help us get our initiative on the ballot. You're supposed to do whatever you can to help us. Yeah, we want you to establish a work session soon, and we want to be at the table. Why? Because it's our table. We shouldn't have to ask because, yes, it is our table. It's the people's table. We are the sovereign. All of us here, we're unpaid people. We do this work because we're passionate, because we care, and we feel we have a responsibility to future generations. We have to leave this planet in a better state than it is now. I think you share that notion with us. We have our grandkids to think of, and we want to be proud about the institutions that we leave. We're not doing the best job of it, and that's why we're here. We feel this responsibility deeply, and we expect that you do as well. It's time.
Hold on a second, Carol. I'm just going to say this one more time. We have a set of rules here about how we take public comment, and it's meant to protect people from feeling intimidated and giving their comment about no applause. This is applause in sign language. If we continue to see demonstrations and hear demonstrations, I'll stop public comment, the board will recess, and we'll come back and see if we can start again and people can follow the rules. So hopefully I won't have to take up more of your time, reminding you of why we adopted these rules. Rules we adopted on a unanimous vote of this board, because we felt it was important that people feel comfortable addressing us. So please respect those rules. Go ahead, Carol.
I'm Carol Scheer. I live in Commissioner Williams' area. To follow on what Michelle has said, our federal government and Constitution does not protect people from corporations. So today I refer you to 3 videos which will put in context what and why grassroots actions are necessary. And I hope the public is also watching and will also view the videos and hold you accountable for what is in the videos. First, the YouTube video with Chuck Willer. His last name is spelled W-I-L-L-E-R. It's called A Colony Called Oregon. It addresses Lane County specifically. Number 2, the Ernie Niemi video. Niemi is spelled N-I-E-M-I. It's videoed October 19th. It's a presentation that Community Rights of Lane County had. It's on their website, so go to Community Rights of Lane County, look under Resources, and then Audio Video. You will find his video called Sustainable Forests. Ernie is a natural resource economist. Third, a YouTube video called Presentation Curzon, spelled C-U-R-Z-O-N, Energy at 121 Oil and Gas London, 2017. It speaks to shareholders about the benefits of working cheaply in Oregon to build as many as 400 wells on logged land with roads already in. On to another issue, which is a federal government House bill which passed, 2936. It was co-sponsored by Oregon's Greg Walden. We need to get this guy out of office. The name of the House, the title is the Resilient Forest Act. It is logging without laws. This has been before the Senate and is presently, I believe, not going forward, but parts of it could be, and we need to watch that very carefully. What it says is 80 million acres in the West need to be logged to prevent fires. 80 million acres in the West logged. This is environmentally disastrous and wrong-headed as it relates to fires. Forests with the highest levels of protection burn the least severely. Areas that have been severely logged burn the most severely. Clear cutting would release massive amounts of carbon and cause severe fires, which are much hotter and can destroy the carbon retention possibility of the soil for lifetimes.
Thank you. Pam Driscoll, followed by Katie Geiser.
Hello, my name is Pam Driscoll. I live in Dexter, Oregon, and Mr. Williams is my representative. And I know last week you said, Mr. Williams, that you didn't receive any payment for being the mayor of Cottage Grove. Well, I've been heavily involved in citizens initiatives for over 20 years, and it's hard, grueling work, and I've never received a penny myself, but I don't complain about that. So now that you're making $83,000 a year, I expect you to work for the people, but actually I don't really think you will. Mr. Bozovich, you said how you didn't want anybody applauding. Well, I listened to the work session part of the agenda last week, and you said someone could have jumped up and down, but they didn't last week, and then you saw heads nod. And so you tell us not to applaud, but then you thought somebody could jump up and down and say something. So you're giving conflicting messages there. Okay, so what it looks like to me is you guys are basically hiding behind the law. I heard Dingle, and you guys, let's wait to hear Rasmussen, what Rasmussen says February 2nd, and then usually the judge will give its response 10 days after that. So that's, what, February 12th? But let's wait till May 25th because, our staff, we have to work on the budget. And you know what this reminds me of? It reminds me of what you guys did to Rob Handy. You got that letter in January about him asking for funding to pay for his court costs for the suit that you guys had your secret meeting about to underhandedly take out Rob Handy. And then you didn't even present this letter until 2 weeks before the election. That was really, really underhanded. And I will not forget what you guys did to them. It has no integrity. You used that word in your talk last week, Mr. Farr, about integrity. You guys are the antithesis of integrity. What you're doing is you are promoting the poisoning of the people and the land so that the timber industry can make a few more bucks, so that they can take helicopters and spray it all over. That's insane. And it's the opposite of integrity. It's shameful. Alan Stein had it right. Shame on you. Shame on you. As Thomas Jefferson said, president of our country, the will of the people is the only legitimate foundation of any government. And to protect its free expression should be our first object. Shame on you. I don't expect you guys to do the right thing, but I do expect all of us to get you guys voted out of office. Thank you. And shame.
Thank you. Katie Geiser, followed by Andrew Frost.
My name's Katie Geiser, and I reside in Pete Sorensen's district. We need to find a way to go forward. Those of us in this room, have met many times now, and we return again in a position of advocacy for our health and well-being. Our request is simple. We want those in our community to be healthy and free from the ill effects of poison sprayed from the sky. What a welcome it would be to hear commissioners emphatically recognize the sick and dying in our community, to those who have been exposed to aerial spray of herbicides. What a change it would be to hear sympathy for loved ones lost. It's time to heed Bob Dylan's words. Come gather round, people, wherever you roam, and admit the waters around you have grown, and accept it that soon you'll be drenched to the bone. If your time to you is worth saving, then you better start swimming, or you'll sink like a stone. For the times they are a-changin', come senators, congressmen, please heed the call. Don't stand in the doorway, don't block up the hall. For he that gets hurt will be he who has stalled. There's a battle outside, and it is raging. It'll soon shake your windows and rattle your walls, for the times are a-changin'. Come mothers and fathers throughout the land, and don't criticize what you can't understand. Your sons and your daughters are beyond your command. Your old road is rapidly aging. Please get out of the new one if you can't lend your hand. For the times they are a-changin'. It's time to go forward. Recently, I sat in this room next to a woman who had a chilling story to tell. I did not know her, but was deeply touched by what she had to say. She was a spray victim in the Triangle Lake Horton area. I could feel in her manner the burden of this experience and the toll it had taken in her life and the lives around her. She told me of an individual, a neighbor, who was so physically deformed from spray-related illness that a straw had to be taped to what remained of the person's face in order for the person to receive sustenance. I leave you with this image. It could be your wife, mother, father, child. Please do not delay in addressing this ill in our community. It's time to move forward. It's time for a work session in February. It's time to stop the spray.
Thank you. Andrew Frost, followed by Robin Bloomgarden.
Hi, I'm Andrew Frost from Glenwood. I'm back again for comic relief and to provide a brief interlude into the spraying debate, which I agree with every single one of the comments made. I came here last week talking about the fact that your tax man had put a complaint to a sheriff to get the sheriff to come to remove me, complaint being that I had complained to senators and congressmen about his form of taxation. The fact that you send the bills out, it's mandated that the bills, that they be paid, property tax bills be paid by the 15th of November. Surely, without any legislative need, you can just jump on the case and make sure that they send out the bills by the 15th of October, a month in advance. So everyone has a month to pay their bills, as is standard business practice with anyone sending out $800 to $2,000 bills. The fact that no one responded last week to either my complaint, basically a question about what you thought about the officer coming in and saying, excuse me, he was fine, he was a very polite officer. But your tax man, the one that asked him to get me out of the building because I was causing a stink by phoning up senators and congressmen and district representatives, was coercing a constituent out of there completely illegally, and this is a constitutional requirement. You should be dealing with this. You should not be thinking you can just jump over my, crazy Jack and crazy Andrew. I'd rather be in a forge, heating up a piece of metal and smacking on that and then smacking heads with you lot. So please, can you address it?
So Robin Bloomgarden, followed by Keith Strom.
Robin Bloomgarden, District 5, Gary Williams District. Lane County Commissioners have assured proponents that they look forward to discussing referral of the aerial spray ban petitions to the ballot in a work session. Unfortunately, they are so busy these days, they can't possibly have a work session until May 23rd. That would be after they are comfortably reelected with timber and McDougal money and can then continue ignoring the health needs of all their ordinary constituents. People are dying. Deer and elk are diseased and dying in the forest. Timber jobs continue disappearing. Not an issue. Go away. Just like the Parvin Butte destruction, particulate and noise pollution issues, or the proposed Old Hazel Dell mine project's particulate issues, or constant assaults around the county by their friends, the McDougal brothers, pillaging wherever there is easy money to be made with impunity. These 4 white, older, male commissioners are a real piece of work, and we pay them each $83,000 a year to do this to us. It's time to get rid of them all in May and find some responsive representation for our hard-earned taxpayer money, and we need it now. Thank you.
Keith Strom, followed by Brenda Cushman, I think, Klusman.
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm Keith Strom. I live in Deadwood. I've been in Lane County for longer than that. I had a couple of comments, but first, I don't know as many details about this subject as some of the other people here, so I'm a little less informed. I have attended some of the meetings regarding the spraying when they were held in the Sayusla area. And one of the lessons I learned there was, I hadn't quite expected, was that somehow laws can get made to violate citizens' larger rights. Blew me away. But I had, my 2 comments were these. One was in regards to the big picture, which I like to see more than some people do. It seems that the rights of the citizens have rights, including to protect themselves and to have a say in arranging for that protection from higher powers. I'm not sure that's working as well as it used to, but I think we need to try to do that some more. There's a label of community rights right now, and it's been here for a while, and maybe that's the way to do it. Maybe you need to talk to me one-on-one to see the big picture. I don't have all the answers. Excuse me. And the other comment I wanted to make briefly was a few weeks ago I finished reading a book called A Bitter Fog, written by Carol Van Strom. Used to live just north over the mountain from Deadwood. I really recommend you read it. I read every word of it. It is incredibly detailed and supported by all the legal documents and all of the personal testimony and the damages that came of spraying back in the 1980s, 70s. Wow, it's really something. And after reading that book, I thought, what if I had the chance to make this offer to the right people? I don't know whether that's you or not, but that if you don't think the spraying hurts, I don't have a lot of money, but I could raise the money to bring in some of the chemicals they're spraying and offer you an ounce or 2 to drink right in front of us. That may sound kind of brash, but after reading that book, that's what made me think. And that's it. I'll be brief. If you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer them.
Thank you, Mr. Strom. Brenda Klusman, followed by Logan Overton.
Hello again, Commissioners. For those of you who may not have read this.
Brenda, can you state your name for the record?
Oh, I'm sorry. Brenda Klusman, former resident of Florence, currently resident of Springfield. For those of you who may not have read this or have tuned into it, the following is from the Eugene Weekly's January 25th Lane County area spray schedule just 5 days ago. This column has reported the Oregon Department of Forestry postings of herbicide spraying in the county since at least 2004 and almost every week during the past 6 years. Lane County area spray information. Roseburg Resources, telephone given, plans to aerial and ground spray atrazine, excuse my pronunciation, clopyralid, clean tracks, glyphosate, hexazinone, imazapyr, indaziflam, sulfamaturon methyl, triclopyr with ester, triclopyr with amine, oxyflorphine and penoxylum, forest crop oil, WEB oil, brush and basil oil, Conquer, crop oil concentrate, forest crop oil, petroleum oil, emulsifier, MSO petroleum oil, MSO concentrate, surface, non-ionic surfactant, Insist 90 and or no foam on 1,882.2 acres in many areas southwest of Veneta. Second listing. Roseburg Resources plans to hack and squirt and or spray glyphosate, imazapyr, triclopyr with ester, WEB oil and or forest crop oil on 1,542.1 acres near southeast, in many areas southeast of Florence, and 111.3 acres near Canary Road, northwest of Wohink Lake, outside of part of Florence. Third listing, Seneca Jones Timber Company plans to spray roadsides near Ferguson Road and Wolf Creek Road with 2,4-D with acid, 2,4-D with amine, 2,4-D with choline, 2,4-D with ester, triclopyr with ester, triclopyr with acid, triclopyr with amine, triclopyr with choline, aminopyralid, and or MSO concentrate. How long, my question, how long must Lane County citizens be subjected to this chemical trespass without a choice in the matter? As Lane County voters and proponents of the aerial spray ban and community self-government initiatives, we want your work session on referring these initiatives as ordinances to the November ballot to occur by the end of February, not May 25th, because we know the usual time for scheduling these work sessions is only 4 weeks. Thank you.
Thank you. Logan Overton, followed by David, and I always mess up your last name, Tibet. Thank you.
All right. My name is Logan Overton, and I live in Commissioner Williams' district, as I just found out today. Based on the statements made by the previous public comment, it would seem like Lane County is quickly on the path to embracing multiculturalism because we're bringing Chinese air quality out to the sticks. But as to my comments, I don't have too many more big points to make that haven't already been made by other people or been made in previous sessions. Instead, I'll start off with a couple of anecdotes. In Cottage Grove, my hometown, there was a plan for a housing development right next to, conveniently right next to a lumber yard. And after they'd cut down the relatively old growth of, non-broadleaf trees, they had then decided to cancel it because either they suddenly realized, oh, geez, this is going to go to mudslides the instant we put a house on this, or it was the intention all along. I can't claim to know which. But then they didn't replant it and let it go back to broadleaf brush and, all the weeds that kill cows, that kind of thing. So that might be an interesting legal loophole that probably should get addressed in the future, I would think. But to a more stark example, we only have to look at the twin nations of the Dominican Republic and Haiti, wherein on the western side, there were absolutely no government regulations on cutting down wood for, in this case, wood stoves for just the population. But in the Dominican Republic, there was still a lot of greenery, and this is from photos in the 80s. Now it looks a little bit better because they've taken a few steps forward on the western half to protecting their stuff. But it's just an example of how it probably is the government's duty to protect this sort of thing. But in regarding my past comments, moving on to commissioners being virtually unable to be held accountable for actions in office, Bozovich referred me to, in email correspondence, to a case wherein officials were indeed found personally liable for a rather large sum of money, which came out to 3 months of pay. Quite ridiculous for a personal case, I would think, which surprised me at first, but it was for, at least according to a court, knowingly breaking state law in regards to public meeting law. Now, I haven't seen any particular law against filing laws that are going against state or even federal law. In our current system, it's the role of the courts to smack these down if indeed they come up through petition, which it's county commissioners, job to just forward it on to the bill or whatever. But then the courts will smack it down if it's illegal against state law or potentially against federal law. Maybe some people legalize weed and they don't smack it down because the federal government doesn't step in too quick on that, but that's just my opinion. And Josephine County officials, as I mentioned in email correspondence, have not yet been prosecuted for what you would think they'd be prosecuted for trying to ban GMOs in their county. I've emailed the clerks to see if this had happened outside media attention, but they did not get back to me within the week time span that I'd given them.
Thank you. David Tveit. And I need the next sheet of, thank you.
Pardon?
Sorry, I was calling for the next sheet of public comment.
Yeah, so I'm David Tveit. I live at 801 Lynn Lane in the River Road area of Lane County. I'm in Pat Farr's district. I, like many of us, was also taken aback by 4 out of the 5 county commissioners voting last week to put off a request for a work session until May. And I think virtually all of us here want a work session in the nearer future, like February, and not 4 months off in May. There are many things you commissioners have raised that you want addressed before you're possibly referring these ordinances. If you commissioners want to address these issues in a timely fashion, then starting the process in February makes sense. Also, most work sessions get scheduled way faster than 4 months out, most within a month, so please maintain credibility with us by scheduling this in late May, by late February, I mean. We don't want to wait out the outcome of the legal process on our charter amendment initiatives. This legal wrangling could go on for a long time, and we want you to just straightforwardly support putting these initiatives to the Lane County voters in the form of ordinances. Lane County voters have clearly shown a broad support for voting on these 2 initiatives, and you as county commissioners should be willing to allow us to vote on it. If the charter amendments do get on the ballot, you can withdraw these ordinances. We need a full campaign cycle to present our case to the voters. If you delay getting the ordinances on the ballot by delaying the work session to May, to me it shows you aren't sincere and instead are acting to subvert the democratic process here in Lane County. And this would further raise the question of whether you are too beholden to moneyed interests in Lane County and not to the voters of Lane County. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm having trouble with Marshall, and it looks like it begins with a G. Okay, there you go, thank you. Followed by Kevin Matthews.
Thank you. My name is Marshall Gauze. I live in Cottage Grove. I'm in Gary Williams District. My wife is Katya Kohler. She's one of the chief petitioners on the charter amendment to ban aerial spraying. I just wanted to clarify that as someone who's been involved in this with her from the very beginning, there's no conflict between moving forward on these ordinances and waiting for the outcome of the judge or judge's decision on the amendment process. As one of the chief petitioners, she's very clear that she'd like this issue to just be addressed as soon as possible. We're not interested in worrying about waiting to find out about the legality of the charter amendment versus what we know can be done immediately, which is putting an ordinance in front of the voters. And as being involved in this for several years, I've personally witnessed that thousands of people, we had up to 30,000 signatures across both initiatives. That's a lot of voters in this area that want this dealt with, as well as the right to local self-government, and dealt with soon. I mean, hard pressed to think of an issue that has that much public endorsement and people that have worked so hard on it for years to say we want this taken seriously now. So I encourage you to have a work session as soon as possible into February. We're happy to be involved in that process with our input and make this something that we can all be proud of. We can set the trend here in Lane County. We can move forward, make the model for the whole state, and be proud of what we come out with. Thank you.
Thank you. Kevin Matthews, followed by Rich Gross.
Good morning. My name is Kevin Matthews. I'm a candidate for East Lane County Commissioner, and I live on the Middle Fork Willamette in Dexter, where my wife and I run Swan Farm Occoteques. 4 years ago, I ran against Faye Stewart for East Lane County Commissioner seat, and was honored to come within 9 votes out of 15,000 ballots cast of being in a one-on-one runoff with Mr. Stewart. As we all know, he resigned last spring, and another Cottage Grove Republican was appointed to fill the seat.
Not a Republican.
And please do not interrupt the public commenters.
False accusations.
Excuse me, Commissioner.
Hey.
Gary.
Since
Let him go.
Mr. Stewart is no longer on the commission, it's sad to see how the commission has declined. Mr. Stewart had a sense of shame. When we came to the board during the last election and brought to the board's attention plans to do large logging of the heart of Blue Mountain Park south of Cottage Grove, the sense of shame kicked in, and Mr. Stewart led the board in reversing that and stalling some other logging projects by the board. This current board seems to want to use every possible pretense on behalf of the majority's large contributors to prevent the people from voting on a duly verified initiative. The citizens have treated you with tremendous respect. They have treated you as reasonable, well-intentioned public servants. I submit that reasonable, well-intentioned public servants don't take $5,000 and $10,000 checks from the biggest lying, cheating, resource pirates operating in Lane County. That's dirty money. Who gets elected? What kind of politician gets elected with dirty money? There are 5 people running for East Lane County. 2 of them are not here, have not participated in this. 1 is here trying to block the people's vote. 2 of us are standing with community rights, asking you, set aside the pretenses, schedule the work session, move forward, and let the people vote.
Thank you. Richard Gross, followed by James Barber.
Again, I'm Richard Gross from Deadwood, Oregon. Good morning. We're all in this together. All our issues overlay each other. It's all dovetailed together. And because there's a group of people rurally who are talking about a problem with aerial herbicide spraying, doesn't mean that we're all not affected and that we all need to have high regard for each other and move forward. It's time. It really is time on this planet, in this state, on this planet. It is time, guys, and everybody knows it. You know, somehow we all feel like we're not being heard. I've been talking about the issue of aerial spray for 45 years. Should I think that I'm being heard? No. There's a system that's so institutionalized, so ingrained, so embedded, that our minds are colonized. I was given a note to pass this perhaps missing piece of information that is key to the whole process that will help us to move forward with this. You guys have made a gesture. Come on, let's stop sitting there with our cards, playing poker, and keeping a false front as to what's really happening. We can't wait for legal processes to conclude. We won't know for many weeks what the judge will decide, and then weeks will pass before that decision will be appealed. It will be months before the legal process will conclude. We can't wait for that uncertain outcome before getting started. If you guys really, truly have good intentions to see this process through and to have a genuine concern for the opinions, the 30,000 opinions of your constituencies, then you will take this on as you have offered and proceed forward. You know, the delay of 4.5 months is ridiculous. So how about it? Let's put our cards out and, either do it or don't. That's what's going to happen anyway. So stand up, let's do it or not.
Thank you. James Barber, followed by Justin Workman.
Commissioners, name is James Barber. I live in Commissioner Williams' district, and I'm a candidate for East Lane County Commissioner. I talked with Commissioner Chair Bozovich at the Science Pub briefly about the date set for the work session. And I think the reasons that you guys stated last week are completely rational and sensible. The problem is it's only from your perspective. Maybe a few more people involved in that decision, but clearly the petitioners had a different idea on what they had requested. It's always good to have more voices in the room when we're making these kinds of decisions. Currently, the process is playing out over a number of weeks as we go back and forth through public comments and commissioners' responses. And it would probably be a heck of a lot quicker to just have a work session about this. We've got a situation that will likely take more than one work session. So to wait until May 22nd is clearly not acceptable here, and the people seem to think that there's disingenuous motives behind that. And I think that's all, it's fixed if we just schedule something sooner to have the discussion about how to move forward. There's going to be questions that come up in that first work session that are going to have to be dealt with. It's a process that who knows how long it will take to overcome and come to an agreement between the two sides. So I would urge you to move the work session up, show some good faith in the process, and keep us from having to come back here every week for 4 more months. Thanks.
Thank you. Justin Workman, followed by Marilyn. I can't quite catch the last something Shaw. So go ahead,
Justin Workman, 19204 Fish Creek Road, Blatchley, Oregon. That is Triangle Lake, if you guys don't know that. Mr. Like and I spoke here a couple months ago, and you said, how you would love to have a meeting with me and talk this out and hear me out. Well, I have to come to you for a meeting. I've sent you 4 emails now about this.
You don't want to catch my illness.
So I hope that you respond and make that happen, or are you not sincere?
No, I've been sick.
Been sick, okay. I wonder if anybody else sees the irony here this morning when we are told we cannot clap in here, right? And Mr. Bozovich would love to just stop us from clapping and showing our support of what we agree on in here or disagree on. Do you see the irony? You won't step up to the timber companies and work on our behalf for our health. You'd rather stop us from clapping than stop the timber companies from spraying these pesticides. My family was poisoned. I don't know who has children up here, but my children were poisoned. What would you do if you had a child poisoned? Too. And myself and my wife and some neighbors. What would you guys do? Please. You know we have no redress. You were there in Salem when they created that. I've heard it from your mouth. It's time to act. The timber companies can do what they want and get away with it. Oregon Right to Farm and Forest Act, study it. Because if they fell a tree on your car, if they take out your fence, if your property floods, or if they spray chemicals from their helicopters and they enter your body, you can't do shit about it unless you have organ failure or death. Okay? That's what we live under here. It's time. The 3 times I put some articles in the paper describing what happened to my family out in Triangle Lake, Mr. Bozovich is the first person to respond online, and it's not positive. He's never had 1 ounce of remorse or care towards me or this issue that I've ever seen. And I'm ashamed to say that I am in your district. Let's make some change here. People are seriously getting poisoned and been infected by this shit. It's ridiculous. This is West Coast. Let's make some change. Let's be progressive.
Thank you, Mr. Workman.
You're welcome.
Marilyn. Marilyn, if you give your name for the record, because I couldn't quite read your last name.
My name is Marilyn Oldershaw, and people often have trouble with that. I don't know why. I'm a resident of Deadwood. I have lived on my property for 35 years. We have 60 acres, and we consider ourselves stewards of the land. We chose to come in a rural area to help protect that property. We are very careful about the things that we do on our land so that it will be there for the future. This has not come up today, but I think one of us needs to say thank you for the efforts that you have taken for those things that you work on. Your job is extremely difficult. It's not easy to sit here, ahead of a group where one person after another is pleading their case for something that definitely needs attention. I've been on both sides, and I know what that feels like. Although these decisions are difficult, the issues that have been raised today and previously, and my neighbor who's been at this a lot longer than I have, are real and need to be addressed. We need to do our work as you do your work, and that means having ample time to prepare and inform the citizenry of Lane County about what they need to do. I am disappointed, Mr. Bozovich, that you do not recognize that the wiggling of hands is actually a compromise position that has been taken by audiences or congregations so as not to disrupt the proceedings. I cannot imagine that this quiet motion would act against anybody who was not for a particular situation. It is an act that I learned from attending services at my synagogue as a way of acknowledging something that's happened or something that's said so as not to interrupt the proceedings. So I do ask you to reconsider that position, not as an interruption, but as a quiet display of support. Yeah. Thank you for your consideration, and I hope that you will get these workshops organized sooner rather than later so that we can all get about our business. Thank you.
Thank you. So with that, we need to pause public comment and move on to our 10 o'clock time certain item. We'll get back to public comment immediately after the 10 o'clock time certain. And our 10 o'clock time certain item is under county administration, and it's a report in the matter of presenting an audit on the local option tax levy funds that supports jail beds and youth services for the fiscal year ending June 30, 2017. And we have Robert Tintle and some folks here from an accounting firm, I believe. So, Steve, do you want to introduce this one?
Sure, Mr. Chair. We do this every year. As the board is aware, it's been to the Finance and Audit Committee. This is our commitment as part of the original 2013 jail levy, our promise to voters to audit the use of public safety levy funds each year. And we contract with Moss Adams to do that independent audit, and today is an opportunity to hear the results of that audit. So I'll turn it over to Robert Tintle, our finance manager, to provide a little more detail and introduce our guest from Moss Adams.
Good morning, Commissioners. Thank you for the opportunity to come before you today to talk about the jail levy. I am joined by Moss Adams, our auditing firm. I have Jim Lanzarato and Kevin Mulalile. In the audience, we should be expecting Sheriff Trapp and Karen Gaffney from H&HS. They'll be here available for comments afterwards. So if you have questions and comments, we'd be happy to further the conversation after we hear the presentation from Moss Adams. As Mr. Mokrahajski mentioned, this was presented to the Finance and Audit Committee on December 8th, and the report was issued on November 30th. And as part of our comprehensive annual financial report, which we did receive an unmodified, a clean opinion, this report was given in conjunction with that at the Finance and Audit Committee meeting. And as you're full aware, on December 12th, you accepted the CAFR. Now, today we are presenting the jail levy, the results of that. And with that, I'll turn it over to Moss Adams.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for the opportunity to come and finish the process. So a very critical part of performing any audit is the communication of the results. So we're here to do that. And Kevin, of course, supervised our team, and so he's going to walk through the findings with you. I thought I might just set this up a little bit, a little walk down memory lane, if you will. You might remember that prior to or leading up to 2013, the county, along with other counties that participate in the Secure Rural Schools funding or timber payments, were experiencing quite a drop in revenue. I think the county used to receive over $40 million of what we refer to as timber payments, which pretty much came to an abrupt halt, or it was over 42 million, I think, dropped to $2.5 million in the year 2013. In addition, you're obviously very well aware that of your general fund discretionary dollars, a majority of that supports the sheriff in public safety. I think at the time it was over 66% of your general fund discretionary dollars went to the sheriff. So you can imagine the challenges that you had to face, or your predecessors in dealing. A lot of you were here at the time, some not, but imagine the challenge you face in funding public safety in an environment where you have that severe of a loss. I think the general fund portion of those timber payments was over $15 million, which essentially went down to almost zero. So that's the environment you were in. You went to the voters and asked for a special levy to restore jail beds that had become inoperable due to the constraints, budgetary constraints. In the ballot measure that you sent to the voters, you said that you would have certain audit procedures performed. So one of the things that you were interested in was demonstrating that the general fund support to the jail and to the sheriff would not decline. In addition, you wanted to assure the public that the new dollars that came in from the special levy would in fact go to the intended purpose, which was to secure up to and make sure you had 255 jail beds and a certain number of youth beds and available. and restored. So the audit that you asked of us had several facets, and Kevin's going to walk through those. But prime to that was that the general fund support would not diminish, that you hit the target on the number of jail beds that were open and available, and the number of detention for youth and treatment for youth. And then also that the expenditures that were used of that special levy, in fact, were used by the sheriff in operating the jail. And so that's a little bit of the background, and with that, I'll ask Kevin to help me out. What did we do and what did we find?
Thanks, Jim. I'll walk through the specifics of what Jim was touching on. So there were 6 assertions. The first assertion would be that the local option tax levy would be in a special revenue fund all of its own, so funds would not be commingled. And we found that continued to be the case. The second assertion was that general fund dollars would continue to be appropriated and spent on jail services. And we can see that that was definitely the case. And the sheriff's office has, different ways of spending money, but we could see that of those, these dollars are being spent on jail services. Jim talked about the number of beds that would be continue to be used. So with the jail, it's 255 local adult jail beds, and we did an observation of the jail facility and saw at the time there was more than that. In fact, 256 were in operation at the time. We saw that counts are performed 3 times a day as we expected. So there's controls in place to make sure that beds are operating appropriately. And then with youth services, the board told the public that 16 youth beds would be used for detention and 16 for youth treatment. We saw that that continued to be the case. We had walked through the facilities and made those observations. And then the final 2 assertions, the first one here did change over the past year. The board decided that the allocation of those tax levy dollars would be altered. So 79% is now going to jail operations, and 21% of tax levy dollars are going to critical youth services. Now, the property taxes the county collected that are from prior years that came in late, that continues to be allocated 91.9%. So we saw the county finance has good controls in place, as well as a tax assessor, to make sure that those dollars are allocated appropriately. And then finally, the special revenue fund that holds the property tax dollars for the tax levy, we get issued a clean opinion as part of our audit. So 6 assertions, and we found that all 6 assertions were met and in compliance. So again, issued a clean opinion on that particular special revenue fund, and no issues with any of the assertions that the board laid forth with voters.
Yeah, and I guess with that, we would certainly open it up for questions or any follow-up comments that you might have.
Commissioner Sorensen.
Thank you very much for this presentation today, and I really appreciate the thoroughness of this audit and the timeliness of it to keep it on an annual basis. And would you be doing this a year from now as well? Yeah?
Yeah. In fact, you had engaged us for a 5-year contract. I think we have one more on that. But I believe you had it in the ballot measure that you would continue these audits. And so whomever your external auditor is, I'm sure you will continue to honor that assertion to the public that you'll have this audited.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from the board or comments? So I didn't know if Sheriff Trapp or Karen, if either of you have any comments you want to offer, or.
Thank you, Chair Bosevich, Commissioners. Very pleased to again hear this audit report. It was as expected, as we remain very committed to keeping our promises to the community in the language in the ballot that was voted on initially in 2013. and then renewed with substantial support this last spring in May of 17. A couple of things I think are worth also noting. The change in percentages of the funds going to youth services and to the sheriff's office that occurred 2 years ago now. We're in the middle of the second budget year. After the change, that the percentage reflects a change in the amount of tax levied. The voters have approved a maximum tax of 55 cents per $1,000 assessed value, and for the last two budget years, budget year and a half. The Budget Committee, at the request of the Sheriff's Office and County Admin as we work through the budget process, we requested that the county only levy 38 cents of the approved 55 cents, as that was all that was necessary to cover the expenses that the voters have requested under this ballot measure. So that caused an adjustment in the share. So that's, I think, worth mentioning to people understand that it wasn't arbitrarily changed from 91 cents for the Sheriff's Office. We're just using less, collecting less of what was authorized. And then we will assess as we enter this budget year what that assessment means, if that stays at 38 cents or if that changes based on our needs. But we continue to be committed to only collecting from the community the amount of revenue necessary to provide the service that the community has asked us to provide. So we'll look at that as necessary. The other point that I think is worth mentioning is the requirement in the ballot measure is that the Sheriff's Office maintain not less than 255 local jail beds for adult offenders in the county jail. And we initially, upon passage of the measure in 13, were able to open I think 131 beds additional to make it 256, and that's been the minimum since the levy passed. But as of February, a year ago, February 16, we have been at 317, and very happy to announce or to recognize that on February 3rd, this coming next month, we will include an additional 50 local offender jail beds to be 367, which reflects a 293% increase in jail capacity over the last 5 years. We aren't just operating jail beds, however. We are recognizing the multifaceted issues that address public safety in our community. We have significantly increased and improved our mental health services in the jail through a strong partnership with Lane County Behavioral Health and our medical provider. We have also increased treatment and education services in the jail to inmates through primarily a coordinated partnership with sponsors, reentry services for adult education and treatment to make those inmates leaving our jail more prepared and successful on the outside. Other than that, if you have specific questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Commissioner Farr.
Thank you, Sheriff Trevin. Thank you for the good news regarding the use of the dollars that were approved by the public. I have a question regarding behavioral health services or mental health services. I understand that each month there is a mental health summit that takes place. Can you talk about that a little bit, describe what that is for?
I might defer to the behavioral health staff here. It's actually run, it's a program from Lane County Behavioral Health, but, and I've attended some of that, and so it's more of an opportunity for everybody to get together and make sure we're addressing as much as possible the mental health issues.
I'll tell you, I love seeing you guys standing beside each other.
Oh, thank you, Chair Brozovich and Commissioner Farr. The Mental Health Summit is one of the ways in which we really work to bring the entire public safety system together. And I appreciate the opening because certainly the levy has allowed us to provide a full array of services. So at the Mental Health Summit, it's our opportunity to bring together representatives from local law enforcement, the Sheriff's Office, as well as municipal law enforcement agencies, the District Attorney's Office, and treatment providers, both in the private sector, our nonprofit partners, as well as our own staff, to make sure that we're assessing what the needs are in that intersection between behavioral health and public safety, and then making sure that we're mobilizing the resources to meet those needs. So it's an excellent collaborative opportunity that certainly influences our policy and service work moving forward.
Thank you for that, Ms. Gaffney. I've had a chance to sit in on the summit a couple of times, and it really is remarkable the number of people you attract at 7 a.m. without breakfast and without coffee. There's no enticement. I mean, they're there to simply talk about how to interface between public safety and mental health, because there's no difference there. As Sheriff Trapp has pointed out many times, we operate with our county jail as the largest mental health facility in Lane County, which isn't a good thing. But finding ways to divert people into treatment as opposed to divert people into jail time, I'm really excited about the fact that you really are taking time to do that. And the levy also, subsequent to the levy, we added actually mental health specialists inside the jail. Can you talk about that a little bit, or shall we bring the sheriff back up, or
certainly,
or perhaps Captain Buchwald? I think he's in the audience also.
Yes, and I know the sheriff discussed that in his remarks, and I'm happy to have him talk in more detail about that particular collaboration. As you mentioned, there's been historically, and not only in Lane County, but across the country, there's just a significant amount of people in jails who have diagnosed mental illness. And our effort in our community is really to make sure people are in the right place getting the treatment that they need. So the work in placing 3 Lane County behavioral health staff clinicians into the jail is really to help focus on, in a hospital system, what we might call discharge planning or release planning, to make sure that we're assessing people's needs, and then as we can move people out of the jail, appropriately get them connected into treatment right away. So we have our staff inside the jail meeting with people and making connections, and then ultimately doing that warm handoff directly into treatment as they're exiting the jail, ultimately with the goal to make sure people don't end up back in the jail.
And into treatment, into needed treatment, as opposed to into incarceration. And one more question, if I may, Mr. Chair, and that is, can you talk a little bit about how Hourglass, our Hourglass service, wraps into the public safety, mental health continuum?
Absolutely, Commissioner. Hourglass is our 23-hour crisis center in the community that's been open for the last few years to really fill that gap between emergency departments, which is often the front door into our crisis system, to provide a community-based alternative for people who are having a mental health crisis, have not committed crimes that would warrant being taken to the jail or being admitted into the hospital, but they really need a place to stabilize and get connected to services. So Hourglass is our opportunity to provide that service for people in the community who are experiencing a mental health crisis. And we work closely with Cahoots in the community, as well as the emergency department and other mental health providers, to make sure that people know about that resource and can appropriately access that for crisis stabilization.
Thank you. And as always, finding residential services for people who have behavioral health issues is one of our main priorities. And as you know, Operation 600 moves forward with the potential of a facility on MLK Boulevard to house people with behavioral health and or substance misuse issues. So thank you very much. We all know we have a long way to go, but thank you for the steps in the right direction.
Commissioner Lycan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And really just to speak specifically to the piece here today. I've had the opportunity to serve on the Finance and Audit Committee since I was first elected, and I've been chair since the last 4 years. And I just wanted to say thank you to Moss Adams, first of all, for your professionalism. I think when Commissioner Farr and I serve on the committee together, and so when we receive these audits, we do receive a little bit more in detail. And but I think I think what it does show is that whether you're auditing the jail levy itself or the financial audit of the operation itself, I just want to say thank you to your total professionalism. It's out there, it's for the public, it's so the public gets to see exactly what our finances look like, where your work is done, and where the money is going. And I want to say thank you. It's been great working with you, and I'm hoping that we'll continue that work with you as well, as it just brings that consistency. And I just want to say thank you very much for the work that you do. And it shows, I think it shows the public when you see a levy like this, they know exactly where their money is going. And then, of course, with Sheriff Trapp presenting and talking about even more of an increase in jail beds coming to Lane County, shows the efficiency overall. And so thank you very much. Allows us to, I think it's a great tool in the toolbox to allow us to really take a look at where we need to make correction if we need. And so thank you for your professionalism as we go through this process.
You appreciate that.
Thank you. So I just want to thank Moss Adams for their work on confirming that we adhered to the promises we made to the voters when we asked them to contribute more of their hard-earned money to the county to support these critical services. And I want to thank the financial staff here at the county and the sheriff's office and youth services for the work they've done to make sure that we have clean audits every year, and that we have the paper trail and we can show that we've done what we said we were going to do. And I just want to note just how important this levy's been to Lane County. Before the levy passed, we had dropped down to below 24-hour intake at youth services. And it wasn't very well advertised. It wasn't something we wanted people to understand. But if you were arrested in the middle of the night and you were a minor, you quite often got housed in adult facilities until youth services opened in the morning. Not where we want minors to go. And the importance of expanding those treatment beds and youth services, the one place we're most effective in changing criminal behavior is with our youth. If we can intercept them then and get them into these treatment beds and have that ability to sanction with the detention beds, we can change behavior for their life. And it's such an important piece and why it was something I wanted included in the levy, as well as the functioning of the jail coming up to speed has allowed us to execute things in the Justice Reinvestment Act that we probably could not have without a levy. And that's meant millions of dollars to Lane County from the state in being able to do these restorative justice programs like drug court and treatment court, and where we're actually able to do some of the programs we're doing through our parole and probation because we've got sanction beds available. And we did not really have those necessarily before the jail levy. So this has been a great piece to starting to put back together Lane County's public safety system, but a real piece of making sure we could execute restorative justice. And I just want to thank everybody involved in making sure we kept these promises to the voters. It's what helped us renew the levy with a 73% yes vote, and know that we're going to be able to continue to execute these great programs over the next 6 years rather than kind of on that tipping balance. So really appreciate the work you all have done, and thank you. Any closing comments? If not, then thank you for coming, and we'll move back into public comment here.
Thank you. Okay, thank you, Kevin.
And we'll start out going back to public comment. We had stopped with Maryland, so we're at Diana Derwart, and then next will be Michael something with a Z. I can't quite make out the rest. So let's start out with, is Diana still here? Was she outside? Diana DeWart? I'll give everybody a second. So is there Diana DeWart that came back in the room? I will assume she's left. If I'll give people an opportunity at the end here. Then we have looks like Michael Zachary. I'm not quite sure. Huh? Okay. Zakai. Thank you. If you'll state your name for the record.
Michael Zakai in Deadwood, Oregon. I got confused. I didn't know I was supposed to be speaking. I just thought people who signed up so they knew, people were here. But I just have to make one comment. Why do you interrupt public speaking? People have to work, and you could have done all this. Congratulations to each other some other time rather than while people have to wait to speak. And that's that's all I'm going to say. Thank you.
Thank you. So then I have Lon Otterby, followed by Steve Deere.
Chair Bozovich, commissioners, fortunate time to visit because on the local option levy, I'm a member of the RAC with the BLM. You guys are represented there by 3 other county commissioners from Lynn and Benton and Polk counties at this time. I believe Fay used to be your representative there. As you may know, we had allocations for Lane County of between $350,000 and $400,000 a year. I wonder if they showed up in the audit. We funded the work on the Row River Trail, on Shotgun Park, using and helping with the young folks at the facility out on Martin Luther King. Secretary Zinke put a hold on that whole program, and we lost that money. Money is still available, but they're sending it to Washington rather than keeping it here in our county. And so it'd be interesting to know, as I said, if that showed up on the audit, because Oregon, at my last look, was the 4th worst state in the United States for putting our children in jail. The 4th worst. And that's something we got to fix. We can't put our kids in jail. And these programs helped reduce the recidivism rate and made good citizens out of these kids. And they can be good citizens. They're our children, right? So that it was just a fortunate time, and I wanted to mention that. And anything you can do to get that RAC program going again, really appreciate. I know the Linares, Mr. Linares, who's the head of the program and the head of the whole district for the BLM, would be happy to hear from you. On the issue of the initiatives, you've heard from me. You know the Sierra Club's position. My name's Lon Otterby. Sorry I forgot that. I live on a little farm up in the Mohawk River Valley. But again, today I'm representing the Many Rivers group of the Sierra Club with our 3,300 members in the 3-county area of Douglas, Coos, and Lane counties. It's become apparent to us that the delays, the misdirection in this whole process are about voter suppression. Voter suppression is an evil that we will not tolerate in Oregon. We will not tolerate in Lane County. And the voters in Springfield, in West Lane County, in East Lane County are waking up, and we will respond. Thank you.
Thank you. Steve Deere, followed by Bernadette Barraza.
Morning. My name is Steve Deere. I live in Elmira. I serve on the County Equity and Access Advisory Board, but I'm here only speaking for myself. I'm here to ask you to pass a resolution in good conscience, stating your opposition to aerial spraying of herbicides and to affirm the county's commitment to the democratic process and citizen initiatives. The context of your decisions on this matter are rather disconcerting, and I can't not mention them. In my work, I've spoken before probably 100 different city councils and county commissioners and the like across several states, mostly in North Carolina. I've never seen a body such as a Board of County Commissioners not hold regular meetings at night. For goodness sake, hold meetings at night so the working people of Lane County can speak directly to you. I've never heard of county commissioners paid anywhere near as much as you are, anywhere. Until recently, I've never met with an elected official outside of state governors where the presence of an attorney taking notes was required, in this case by a commissioner about this issue. Nothing exemplifies the undermining of our local democracy as much as your decision to act essentially in opposition and intransigence to this effort. I can think of nothing that exemplifies the inequity rural Lane County citizens face as you're delaying and in effect blocking this initiative. There is no excuse. These words were spoken earlier this morning. I'm sure they've been spoken plenty of times in this room before. The will of the people is the only legitimate foundation of any government, and to protect its free expression should be our first object. President Thomas Jefferson. These words are outside in the plaza, written in stone, the quotation closest to the entrance to this building. This may seem melodramatic, but it's a pretty dramatic thing that you're doing and or not doing. At the end of our lives, what titles we had, what income we've had, they don't matter, you know that. The only thing that matters is that we live our lives in love. And justice is what love looks like in public. And that we strive for justice in community. Some of our rural sisters and brothers have had to go to their deathbeds unduly early because of spraying. When you are on your deathbed, what will have mattered? Thanks.
Bernadette Barraza.
My name is Bernadette Barraza. I live in Gary Williams District. I am going to repeat something I said about 3 months ago, that after a court hearing in the Children v. Gov case, there was a press conference and a reporter asked the kids, what will you do if the judge rules against you, if you lose? And one very young boy answered, well, we'll just go forward. We can't lose. We'll keep fighting. What else can we do? Something along those lines. We need clean air and clean water. We don't really have a choice. And I think that kind of speaks to what people are trying to tell you guys over and over. And I thought if I asked a certain question about banning the spray, that I would be likely to hear that, well, it's more complicated than that, and that's why we have to have this work session and take months to figure it all out and everything. But my mother taught me over 60 years ago, when she was telling me to not tell lies, that if you always tell the truth, then it's easy to remember what to say. Whereas if you start to spin a lie, then you have to remember what you said, and you have to kind of make your life more complicated than it needs to be. So this is similar to that also, that if you do the right thing, it doesn't have to be complicated, because you're continually going forward, and really good people will have your back, people that care about something other than money. And it's just much less complicated to go forward and do the right thing. And I have a suggestion that maybe next time we all show up here, we could forego all of our comments, and you guys could have your work session then, and we would just sit here quietly, and I would ask all these people to try not to glare at you or laugh at you or demean you in any way, but be respectful of the fact that you're having a work party. You could come a half hour early, you could bring a bag lunch, but we take up a lot of your time, and I think we would be willing to hand that time over to let you do your work party then. And finally, I would just like to say that even though I am a sort of generally unfierce person, kind of mousy, I'm a grandmother, I am not a professional anything except a professional mother, but about 10 years ago, my grandson, who was born with health issues, like so many children these days, he had an autoimmune disease. And when he started school, there was a little trouble that the 4J wasn't ready to take on his care. And so I did that during kindergarten, and into first grade, they kind of got the ball rolling. but there were difficulties. And I went up against the 4J, the district nurse, the nurse they brought in to do the care, the principal, the lawyer that they send in for the 4J, and I upped my fierceness, because when children are involved, I don't back down. This is an issue that needs addressing, and sooner is better than making us wait.
Your time's up. So that is the last person oh, no, I've got one more person on a separate sheet here. This is Jabrilla.
Jabrilla
Vaya, yeah. Thank you, Jabrilla.
So I'm Jabrilla Vaya. I live out in Otay in Commissioner Bozovic's district. I hadn't planned on speaking today. I have been holding my brand new grandson. My daughter just had a baby a little over a week ago. So that's been my focus, and I said I didn't want to come up here and just not be present. But I walked into this room and I became very present. And I thought about holding my grandchild and all 8 of my grandchildren and thinking, I really want a future for them. And I really want you all to listen and look at me when I say I want a future for our children that's healthy. It's really important what these folks are doing. I have not done the groundwork with these people. I've stood beside them. I support them, but I haven't gotten down in the trenches with them. They're amazing. They're working hard, and it's all on their time because they care. And I really care. It's time to listen to them, work with them. There's anger in the room. There's frustration. When my children get angry and frustrated, I say, it's time to work together, kids. Let's talk. Let's listen to each other. Let's get out of your headspace. Hear what they're saying. Maybe they could get into your headspace, try to understand. But nothing's going to happen until communication and a work session happens. We need to address this. It's so critical. It's the health of our children. It's the health of the people. You've heard, I spoke earlier as the organic farmer who lives and has watched. I know children that have deformity from 2,4-D. It's directly related. Let's stop this. Let's pay attention. Please. We could go on, and this will not stop because it's so critical. It's time. Thank you.
Thank you. So that's everyone I had signed up to speak. I'll ask, just because I know some people signed up late or might have walked in late, is there anyone else that wishes to address the board this morning? Go ahead and step up and state your name for the record.
My name is Mary Lou Robichaud. I live in Deadwood. I think it's really important that our county commissioners serve the people, serve the will of the people. I was unable to attend the meeting last week. I did watch the video, the discussion about the scheduling of the work session. I want to thank Commissioner Sorensen for standing up and voicing the will of the people and having a work session scheduled sooner rather than later. It's really appreciated that someone is actually hearing what we're saying. There were a lot of reasons voiced why this should wait for 4 months, but in reality, we need a work session to begin the process. There were other issues brought up. We need a work session to identify exactly what issues folks need to gather information on to be able to talk about and work in this work session. We don't need more delay. The voice of the people is really obvious. We've taken a long time gathering signatures for these petitions. These initiatives are crucially important to all of us. And I just ask that you schedule a beginning work session sooner than later. There's no reason to delay. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead.
My name is Krista Niddle, and I live in Eugene, Oregon. And this is the first time I've ever experienced a public official discouraging people from showing hand signals. I've been to many of these kind of gatherings and have actually heard affirmation from the governor and other elected officials, and I found it very repressive when you discourage that, and I find that very alarming. Thank you.
Is there anyone else? Go ahead and state your name for the record.
Aloha, Commissioners. My name is Jesse Boland. I live right here in Eugene, Oregon. I work and specialize in toxicity, especially from airborne pollutants, and just wanted to, maybe you already know, but the lungs have no kind of filtration mechanism. So whatever you bring into your lungs goes directly into your bloodstream, right? And then this goes directly into your central nervous system and into your brain. So this is going to tie in right into your mental health issue here, see? Because these are neurotoxins. And this affects everyone because we all breathe, right? And then when it rains, this goes into your water. So your stomach has a little bit more filtration and protection. Your lungs have virtually nothing. Maybe this will help you. I don't believe that you are the actual decision makers and that these powerful timber companies and this capitalist system are ruling your lives just as much as ours. And if you have the power, you know, I'm baffled at like why you'd want airborne toxicity. Thank you.
Thank you. So I see one more hand up. You can't. You've spoken already. It doesn't. You've had your 3 minutes, sir. So with that, I'm going to. Oh, okay. Go ahead, sir.
Hi, my name is Ron Davis. I live outside of Cottage Grove, Oregon, and actually we moved here probably about 45 years ago and lived out past Lorain. And at that time, we were subjected to aerial spray, as a lot of people over in Deadwood were also. My wife and I have had 3 children with no problem, except for when we lived out there. And she had a spontaneous abortion, along with a lot of people out in Deadwood. It's just amazing to me that we've known this for 40-some years. And, you know, if somebody wants to poison themselves on their own property, that's one thing. But when you allow for people to spray a poison onto other people's property, quite often not knowing what the spray is because of proprietary formula. So you have a situation where, you know, it took 40-some years and we have the public that want an election on this item, and you're not allowing this to happen. That sounds not good. Doesn't sound democratic. It sounds sort of fascist in a way. That you have a corporation which you're listening to rather than listening to the people who elect you. So I would really encourage you to take a look at this and make sure that the people are protected, that there's not stuff that going out in the spray that's coming onto people's property that they don't want on their property, and it's poison. So please do your job. Thank you.
Go ahead.
My name's Thomas Brown. I live in no man's land in Glenwood. I just have a couple remarks here. For over $400,000, the people of Lane County deserve better representation. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that wants to address the board? No, sir. You've already addressed the board. Thank you. Is there anyone that has not addressed the board that wishes to address the board? Seeing none, I'm going to close public comment, and we'll move on to commissioners' response to public comments and or other issues and remonstrance. So, Gary, Commissioner Williams.
I do have a comment. Thank you. First of all,
My apologies to my fellow commissioners and Chair Bozovich and to the citizen when I interrupted him. I should have shown more restraint. Having said that, this past week I've received numerous phone calls from, interestingly enough, it was all women that are involved in some sort of agricultural endeavor, raising nut crops to Christmas trees. These 4 women that I spoke to in the last day or two expressed that they would not come to this meeting or any meeting here because they felt intimidated. So, Chair Bozovich, you're absolutely right about enforcing the rules, that there are people intimidated. They're intimidated and they're not here today to express actually the other point. These are folks that support aerial spraying, and these folks are looking at additional costs to their industry. They're not corporations. They're just small people trying to make a living. And so there is another side to this. And I just wanted to point that out, that I appreciate your enforcement of the rules, because intimidation is a factor of why in all of this discussion we've not heard one individual step forward that supports aerial spraying. So with that.
Commissioner Sorensen.
Well, thank you very much for everyone who's come for public comment. I certainly hope the board rethinks the idea of putting the work session into mid to late May. I don't think that's going to happen, but I do think we should get ready for the work session when we get an opportunity. And I think we need to be thinking about how that is structured. My original idea was that the people that have gone out and gathered 30,000 signatures would have a role in the work session. And I want to make it clear that in my view, that is an important part of why we would have a work session, so that advocates who've gone out and asked people to sign petitions and talked with people that are both for and against putting the measures on the ballot, that they would have a role in that work session. I don't know if that's going to happen or not, but I think that's something worth pursuing as to what this work session would look like. The other thing I wanted to mention is that we all get phone calls and phone messages from people in addition to our email. And I got an interesting phone call the other day from a man who operates a organic farm, and he was recently aerially sprayed, and he was told when he called the Oregon Department of Forestry to call the Oregon Department of Agriculture. And when he called the Oregon Department of Agriculture, he was told that there was nothing he could do about the damages that he suffered. And it seems to me that as with the field burning debate that was involved in Oregon for 30 or 40 years, that we've reached a point where there will be a political response to what I think is a consensus, and that is that you really can't properly regulate aerial spraying of pesticides and fertilizers and other things. It's just not possible to really effectively do it. You can say you're doing it, but then that's what we're doing now, because of course the state will say they're currently enforcing the rules, yet we get these anecdotal phone calls all the time. And it seems to me that local government, in its role as protectors of public health, need to be at the forefront of these things rather than after the fact. And so I feel that the board, when the proponents made the suggestion that we have a work session on putting it out for a ballot, to me that is, politically in the context of today is probably the best that's going to occur. But really what should happen is there should be a public health ordinance on this topic. And we should be talking about having hearings on a measure that would enact an ordinance. And that's something that the public could do via the initiative process, but really it's something that the Board of Commissioners ought to be looking at. And I know that my colleagues went through the period of Oregon's wrestling with the field burning ban, and we're told repeatedly for many years that it would just not be possible to stop field burning because it was a necessary part of the growing practice for one of Oregon's biggest industries, which is the grass seed industry. And yet, we're still the leading grass seed producing state in the country, and we're not having the kind of massive field burning that we had. And that's because of pressure that was put on the legislature and on local governments to reform a bad practice. And I think that's what's going to happen here. And the question is, how fast is it going to happen, and what steps will be taken by this government to be at the forefront? By the way, we've been at the forefront of other public health initiatives, most notably the issue of cigarette smoking by children and vaping and all that sort of stuff. So to me, you know, the arc bends towards justice, right? I mean, we will keep working on this until we are able to succeed and move on to yet other challenges.
So I'd like to spend a few minutes and address a couple things. And first, I want to address the rules for public comment and some of the comments around everything from the silent applause to having to stop for a time certain. Our general public comment is supposed to only be a 20-minute piece of our agenda. And it actually says in our published agendas, if more than 10 speakers are signed up, the chair can choose to limit people's length of time they speak so it can stay within that time agenda. We have not exercised that limit at all. In fact, we've been pretty generous with the 3 minutes even through this whole process and not limited the number of speakers or their time. And that is an important factor, and it's one of the reasons why we had to stop for that time certain agenda item, which had outside folks coming in and folks scheduled to be here. And in fact, I've got staff sitting in the audience waiting for the rest of the agenda items to keep going. The issue about applause and all that was generated after we had a public meeting in which people got up and left because they were intimidated by the crowd and the cheering and the applause. And we found out after the fact that there are people that want it. That's when we went through the sign-up sheet, we kept getting the names where people wouldn't respond because they had left the room, they had left the meeting. And yes, this doesn't interrupt the process, but it shows support for the speaker. And if a majority of the people in the audience are doing this, it will make somebody who is going to stand up and speak against the majority that's been doing this feel quite intimidated. And the point of public comment is to allow people to address their government. So, you know, we all 5 voted in favor of those rules. The rules specifically mention hand signals. So I'm sorry if some people, you know, are used to doing this in their place of worship or in other meetings and encouraged to do it. We don't encourage it here because we want people to feel that they are not intimidated by the majority of the people in the audience if they have a minority opinion and can feel free to stand up and speak it, because we have had problems in the past where people have chosen not to address the board because they were intimidated. So I hope people understand that, and that's the reason it was a unanimously supported rule. Now, if there is anyone on the board that wants to you know, address that, we can do that in the future and change the rule. But until that rule's, you know, revised, that is the rule for conduct at our meetings. And I think it's a fair rule. It's one that's meant to allow people to not feel intimidated addressing us. And I don't think it changes your ability to express your opinion to us. It just changes your ability to act as a group. This is public comment where you come and address us as individuals. You don't stand up there and say, we the audience. You stand up there and state your name. So that's really, I hope people understand that process. I'd like to move on and address a couple things that were brought up today and then talk a little bit about the initiative process. You know, one of the things I want to make a correction here that Logan brought up Josephine County. Josephine County was not a county council referred initiative. It was a citizen initiative that was placed on the ballot. So the county commissioners are not liable for what was placed on the ballot. What was being requested of us is to actually take positive action to refer something to the ballot. And I did provide Logan a reference to a previous suit that this board was involved in where there was actually personal financial liability of board members. So you know, just so there's a distinction between those as people start looking stuff up. I also, you know, received a letter from the petitioners, and I think all the board members did. And I was kind of glad to get it because it kind of finally laid out what the goalposts were, because the goalposts seemed to move. And you know, one of the things that it makes mention of, and I've heard this repeated over and over again, is about the 30,000 signatures, without any, you know, like making it sound like there's 30,000 individuals. And I would challenge you to actually show me 30,000 individual signatures and not duplicated signatures as the petitions were circulated together. That said, you know, I am not seeing, you know, as I read through the bullet points, this concern for timing and all that. Signatures were turned in for the community rights in December for the May election. We were talking about holding a work session in May for a November election. That's more time to prepare for the ballot than you were prepared to do for a charter amendment election. So all of this stuff about, oh, we need a lot of time to prepare for it going on the November ballot, we were offering a process that was going to allow more time than what you were going to allow yourselves. So I don't believe that this is about a timing issue. You know, what I believe is it gets down to the final bullet point here, which basically says this is really about a political agenda where you want to use this as an election issue in the upcoming May primaries. And you wish to have this held before then, even though there's much legal research to be done. And it's not about waiting for the rest of the court cases, because May 23rd, there's still going to be court cases in process. We weren't expecting all of the litigation to be done. That was the first date after the May election that we could hold a public work session and give our legal counsel enough time to prepare everything. And no, it is not normal to schedule work sessions within 4 weeks. Quite often, they're months out scheduling. We're holding a work session this afternoon on marijuana that was scheduled last fall. You know, because one, it was going to take a lot of time to do the legal research behind some of the actions we have available to us when it comes to local control of time, place, and manner for some of the marijuana operations in our county that have been causing significant problems with our citizens. So, you know, as I look at this letter, it gets down to this is really about a political agenda. And there is a prohibition on us spending public money for political efforts. And I've actually gotten to the point where, you know, when we get to agenda setting, I'm going to remove my support for a work session. You have the right now to go out, collect signatures, and place these on the ballot as referrals of an ordinance. You can start that process today. If you truly have 30,000 people out there, you only have to find half of them to get to sign those referrals. And that way you know you're starting for your November election today. Go for it. Because, frankly, I will not participate in something that is a political agenda. So I am going to ask the board later to cancel the May 23rd work session. So moving on. No, it's allowing for the public initiative process to run as the Constitution and our charter allow it. You are welcome to gather petitions and file a petition. We are not required to hold a work session and refer a ballot measure. It's not time for agenda setting, so we'll get to that later in the meeting. But Commissioner Farr, if you wish to address that.
Yeah, to the agenda item, you know, I'm really anxious regarding the initiative process itself because, you know, in Oregon is unique. We do have an initiative process that has been successful in many, many cases in getting an initiative on the ballot. Sometimes it passes, sometimes it fails, sometimes we love it, sometimes we hate it. And Ms. Mokrajewski, I'm really interested in a work session that would discuss the initiative process itself to make sure that we're all certain as to how the law is applied and how you know how we do move forward. It's not a mystery. I mean, the initiative process isn't a mystery. So I think discussing it and discussing how the initiative process does work and how people can actually get an initiative on the ballot legally and in a direct fashion. You know, you look at the initiatives that have passed in Oregon. Some of them have been good, some have been bad. Somebody talked about Measure 11, actually youth in jail. That came from Measure 11. We have lots of kids under 18 years old who are spending lots and lots of time in jail. Well, that came from a public process. And we also look at Measure 5, which is our tax limits, property tax limits, Measure 47, which became Measure 4050. Our property tax limits all came through the initiative process. So finding a way to make certain that we do understand how it happens, because we do it in Oregon. Sometimes we love it, sometimes we hate it, and I'm really interested in answering those questions publicly and discussing them. I will offer, once again, a couple of you all have taken time to come to my office and talk. Anytime you want to come to my office and talk, I would love to do that and be a public discussion. Just one other thing that, Michelle, I'm glad you're still, Ms. Holman, you're still here. You said you're supposed to help us get our initiative on the ballot. We're supposed to facilitate getting initiatives on the ballot. That is what government does. So, and I would love to have that discussion as to how do we facilitate getting initiatives on the ballot, whether we hate them or love them, whatever the initiative may be. So, that when it comes time to agenda setting, I'm going to talk about the initiative process, and it's not something that takes a great deal of preparation. This is the law. Let's talk about the law. Let's have a work session to talk about the law and discuss the initiative process. The other thing I will mention, and this is other issues. I spent last Thursday and Friday at Willamette High School listening to students who were interested in changing laws, and they're going through the process pretty well out there. Ms. Mokrajewski, no less than 5 of these groups of students wanted to address laws surrounding homelessness and laws surrounding placement of housing. I have pictures of it. There were more people talking about homelessness than any other 2 issues combined. It was pretty startling to see kids who are seniors in high school ready to tackle the rest of their life. The one thing they want to talk about is homelessness. So that encourages me that we as a board can follow their lead and move forward with the things that really are important to making certain the next generation and the people who live in Lane County can do so without the instability that's caused by not having a home. So thank you.
Commissioner Lycan.
Real quickly, thank you, Mr. Chair. And just earlier, Commissioner Sorensen alluded to the board had taken up some issues regarding public health. You are looking at the only commissioner voted no on Lane County Tobacco 21. Had nothing to do with the fact that I didn't support it. It's statewide significance. Now, I supported the state legislature enacting Tobacco 21 statewide. I did not support Lane County being created as an island. And this is a statewide significant issue. It's not a Lane County issue that you're talking about. And I would urge you to look at working with a statewide group to look at a statewide initiative process as well. And I don't hear that. Maybe you have. I have no idea. And I'm going to say it again. It's pretty obvious that we have one Republican state legislator in Lane that represents Lane County. Your Democratic state legislators are not listening to you either. That is true, isn't it? But you're coming here, talking to us, asking us to refer something that, by the way, we're preempted by state law. We're preempted. We're preempted. We're preempted. And if you look at my track record, which is, it's been a while, even the city of Springfield, when I was mayor, when people asked Springfield to follow Eugene on no smoking in restaurants and taverns, I said, no, we're not going to follow that. Guess what happened? A year later, it was statewide. These are statewide significant issues. And that's really where I come from. This has nothing to do whether I think that we should, that I want to interrupt this process. And my track record will show when I was mayor, I listened intently to Joe Leahy, who was our city manager, and listened to his advice. And I'm listening to our county council, Steve Dingle. And when we were talking about, I didn't talk about the May date being set in stone. We didn't vote on anything, by the way. What we did is that's a placeholder. I even came out and suggested that if Judge Rasmussen, again, under advice from our legal counsel, comes up with something sooner, I'm okay with then going through and say, good, if we can grab the information, then let's go through the work session process. The May date was a placeholder, and I can't emphasize that enough. I'm glad there's still some folks here listening, and I appreciate that very much. But folks, I've been as consistent as I can possibly be in my public service career. By the way, I do have a funny thing to tell you. So several years ago, I took money from a lumberman out of Roseburg in my campaign. The Eugene Weekly threw a little bomb at me. His name was Sid Lykin. He was my grandfather. How dare me taking money from my grandfather who supported my efforts in public office. By the way, he was a liberal Democratic state representative, but that's beside the point at the time. But how dare me take money from my grandfather? Anyway, the bottom line is, again, you're looking at one person who actually signed a cease and desist order on the McDougal brothers. Right here, during the Mountain Gate process back about 12 years ago. I was shocked that they even gave me a donation because I've known them for probably a quarter of a century, and sometimes we're up and down. But the fact they did, that's fine. But they know they can't get in. They're not going to buy me because I got proof here in the pudding, folks. And so I'm consistent. I've been consistent across the board here in my career. I appreciate the comments. I mean, if you want to blast me, that's fine. I mean, I've been married 26 years. I mean, come on. You know, if you've been married long enough, you're going to get in arguments with your spouse. That's life. Sometimes the kids will spout off. That's life. So I don't mind. It doesn't bother me. I've been doing this long enough. My shoulders, you know, my skin's pretty thick. So, but I just wanted to talk about the fact that I've been very, very consistent in my career. And this is a statewide significant issue. And that's how I'm approaching this. I'm not going to get in your way. That's not my issue at all, is getting in your way. But I do believe there's a legal process. We have to allow that to go forward. And sometimes you just have to be patient. And I apologize on that, but there's nothing I can do. Those are just some comments I wanted to make real quickly. And I do appreciate folks coming here today. And to real quickly, Mr. Frost, the assessor is an independently elected individual. So we have no jurisdiction over his operation. And that's the best way I can describe. That's all I can say to you. The only thing we control is his budget. But we do not have jurisdiction over his, because you elect him. You elect him. He's an elective individual. Re-election. And in fact, he's up for re-election right now. Well, but that's, again, that's not under our jurisdiction. That's under his as an independently elected assessor. And that's all I can comment on that. And I'm more than happy though to talk to you again on the phone. And like I said last time, it was great to finally put a face to the phone call. Again, that's.
Can you speak up? I can't hear you very well.
It's not time for public comment.
It's not time for public comment. All I'm going to say is that that's up to him. Thank you, Mr. Frost.
So, any other comment from the board? So I'll just wrap up by reminding folks if they want to go back to September 13th, 2016, there were memos relative to the initiative process written by legal counsel then. It was when we decided not to take any action looking at the initiative process because we did not want it to be construed as having any content intended consequences because there were initiatives being circulated at the time. But we did have a significant discussion back in 2016 of the initiative process, and there are legal counsel memos around that. If folks want to go back and look, they can actually click on that agenda item to see the memos concerning initiatives. So with that, I want to move on in our agenda. We still got a lot to try and get done before lunchtime and a packed afternoon. So we'll move on from Commissioners' remonstrance to any emergency business. Any emergency business? No. And that gets us to the consent calendar, and these are items that are considered routine by the Board of Commissioners and are enacted in one motion. There will be no separate discussion of the items. If a commissioner wanted to discuss them, they would have asked for them to be removed under adjustments to the agenda. If you want to see the details, you can click on the view material for each item to get the details behind those items. Is there a motion to approve the consent calendar? Commissioner Lycan.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to move approval of the consent calendar.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. It's been approved. Any opposed? Approved unanimously. And that was moved by Commissioner Lycan, seconded by Commissioner Williams for Ms. Jones. Moving on to item 7, County Council announcements. We do not have need for an executive session today, and I don't see County Council here, so I assume there are no other announcements. That gets us down to county administration announcements.
Mr. Chair, I'm okay foregoing any announcements here so that we can get to the next 2 items that we have staff in the room for.
Thank you. So then we'll move on then to item 9A, which is a work session on disaster preparations for assisted living and skilled nursing facilities. And I think we have Jocelyn Warren and a few other folks from H&HS, and I don't know if Linda, if you want to come up also, or emergency operations manager, or I never get Linda's title quite correct. She'll have to state it for me. So if you want to kick us off, Steve.
Mr. Chair, this was an item that was we're presenting today in response to the board's request to discuss this, and I think Jocelyn Warren has a presentation and will lead the overview. And
Thank you, Commissioner Bozievich and Commissioners, Chair Bozievich. We are presenting today on the item about emergency preparedness in senior living facilities. I am joined by Selena Jaramillo, our Public Health Emergency Preparedness Coordinator, as well as Linda Cook, the Lane County Emergency Coordinator. So we will do a short presentation and then leave enough time for Q&A. So the one thing I wanted to do is give a little background on the senior living facilities in Lane County. We have 164 facilities. Those include adult foster care, independent retirement communities, assisted living communities, nursing facilities, and residential or memory care. The locations of those facilities is available on the intranet. It's not a public document, but it's available in the emergency management mapping system. So if you're interested in where those are located, we've recently mapped all of those facilities in Lane County. So to the question of emergency plans and procedures, the requirements for the different facilities can vary by the type of facilities, whether they are regulated by state or federal regulations. There is a new rule that was effective November 2016 that was issued by the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services to bolster emergency preparedness. There's also been a lot of concern on the national level about the ability of these facilities facilities to respond in an emergency. There were really kind of 4 broad areas that were outlined in this rule. There are requirements for an emergency plan, for policies and procedures, for a communication plan, and that includes how people are communicating with the other emergency managers in their district, as well as state and federal folks, and then training and testing. So the plans have to be exercised as well as developed, just as we do in Lane County preparedness. The facilities were given 1 year to comply. Some of the states requested that there be a delay in the states demonstrating compliance with this rule. So I believe, to our understanding, CMS has allowed for states to demonstrate full compliance by 2022. So that is the delay that was allowed. The regulatory oversight in Oregon, the responsibility for that lies with the Oregon Health Authority. The Public Health Division itself, the Healthcare Regulation and Quality Improvement section, has responsibility for hospitals, hospice, home health, ambulatory surgery, dialysis, and other types of non-long-term care providers. The Health Systems Division of OHA, the Compliance Unit, has responsibility for the psychiatric residential treatment facilities, and DHS, Aging and People with Disabilities, Safety Oversight and Quality Unit, has responsibility for the long-term care facilities. There are a lot of resources available now. The CMS rule has created a lot of activity around people preparing for compliance. The OHA, of course, is assisting locals with developing those plans. They're sharing their plans, hazard reports, connecting people to emergency services. They've posted those online, the CMS resources. There's also a long-term care facilities task force in the Portland metro area that has created a website that has a lot of those resources available. And another piece of information, I spoke recently with Matthew Conrad, who he manages the maintenance systems for Pinnacle, which operates a network of senior living and rehabilitation centers in Oregon, including 3 in the Eugene area. I asked him about what does it look like locally, trying to get some sort of local information on how the CMS rule is being implemented, and asked him whether he sees whether there are any gaps in the services or the gaps in preparation right now. And so there's quite a lot going on with the CMS. He also believes that the State Fire Marshal's Office has been very proactive in the state of Oregon, so that Oregon itself is actually a little ahead of the game in terms of other states in emergency and long-term planning. He did say if there's a gap, it's really around communication, and this won't come as any surprise. I think that communication in an emergency is always a challenge. He does think that the hospitals have been very successful in implementing equipment, channels, procedures, and planning around communication, especially like ham radio systems, VHS and UHF procedures, but that other people in the healthcare system, other partners, such as long-term care facilities or some of our senior facilities, have not been included to the same extent yet in that communication planning. So he is interested in doing more of that planning. So I think that might be the next kind of level of planning for emergency preparedness, to loop those folks into the planning that's done with cities, counties, and our other emergency preparedness partners. And that's the end of my presentation. Would you have any questions, or would you like some more information from our other experts at the table here?
Commissioner Sorensen.
I think it's come to me through the holiday season with all the Christmas cards and letters I get. By the way, we've given up our landline, so you can now reach us on da-da-da. Okay. Now, I wrote that in my own Christmas letter probably 6 years ago. So, I'm still getting them. And so it used to be, I think the UN said that the measure of prosperity of a culture was based upon the number of telephone lines that were installed in people's homes. Well, that's not now a good indicator really, in my opinion, in our country. So what are we going to do about this? I mean, do you guys have ideas? You're not going to be able to call me on my home number. And I'm not going to be able to call my mom on my home number. So what are we going to do about this? I mean, I don't mean to take it into a personal vein, but it's kind of a personal thing.
We had a work session on this.
Yeah, we did. I want to hear what their real answer is.
For you, have you signed up for Alert Me?
You know what? I can't say right here and now that I have, but I've signed up for lots of things, but I don't know about that. Where is that? How do I sign up for it?
First of all, thank you for your interest in this topic, and Chair Bozovich for asking for the work session. I appreciate all the work that all of the commissioners do, so thank you. We do have what is called AlertSense. It's a mass notification system, and we understand and have known for years that people are abandoning their landlines and going to cellular phones for notification of alerts. We have a system that you can sign up for. It's called Alert Me. You can register your cell phone. You can register it to a physical address so that if something is happening at that location and you happen to be on vacation in Arizona, you'll still get the alert that something's happening in your neighborhood. This system also is integrated with the state and federal warning systems, and it can also tap cell towers in the area. So if something is happening in a particular location, it will ping the cell tower. The cell tower will send a message out to all of the cell phones in the radius or the area that the cell tower can reach. So there is a lot of work and a lot of progress through technology that has happened over recent years to address the issue you brought up.
And in this event, like we had the ice storm a few years ago, when we have these emergencies, is what you're trying to do in this context to evacuate people that are in these facilities and get more knowledge about how to do that or be prepared for it, or is that what this is really all about?
I can say that there could be an evacuation. Some of these facilities also would act as triage centers for hospitals in the event of an emergency. So it could be accepting new patients as well, depending on the emergency itself. There's a kind of a wide range of variables that would be involved.
Okay.
And if I just may add, I think the concept is still the same as for our personal preparedness. The burden of having the plans in place and to know what to do is on the facilities themselves. So it's not that they need to, so as they do, they send me and Linda letters and let us know that they're in touch with, that's part of the requirement, that they're in touch with the emergency management system in the region, but also that they have certain capabilities that they're willing to enact, for example, agreements with other facilities or with transportation, et cetera, so that they can take care of themselves as much as possible to truly minimize the burden that it would be on our very precarious response system, which is just going to be immediate life and safety for the most part. So as much as these facilities can be ready and self-sufficient for as long as possible, that's really what the ruling really encourages.
Commissioner Farr.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Dr. Warren, thank you for the presentation. Ms. Jaramillo, thank you for being here today. And Ms. Cook. You know, you pointed something out that's really important regarding in case of an emergency, the facilities provide nursing care are also an asset in an emergency for us. And quite often they are a place for distribution of services and for consolidation of services. I used to be on the FEMA allocation board when I was with Food for Lane County. And you know, you look at what are your assets going to be in case of an emergency, and you know, we think of because of incidents that happened just recently, not in Oregon but elsewhere, we think of the nursing facilities, this kind of a long-term care facility as being a liability, but it really can be an asset. But my other question was also regarding my past life. Years ago, when we were we wanted to turn a little tiny hardware store into a great big home center. And we realized that other people had done stuff like that before. And so we didn't try to reinvent the wheel. We just kind of brought a lot of wheels together to put them under our cart and push it forward. And I'm looking at some of the assets, some of the work that other people have done. There's a looking at, for instance, the Nursing Home Incident Command System out of California that really goes into great detail, not necessarily for us as a county, but to distribute to the nursing homes or to the facilities. As you mentioned, Ms. Jaramillo, it is their responsibility to have a plan in place regarding how they respond to an emergency. And I guess what I would hope that we'd be able to do is just to make sure that everybody does have that plan in place. Although I'd be shocked if they didn't, particularly regarding the high attention that's being given to surrounding recent events. So I guess I don't have a question unless it's, are we looking at other resources from outside instead of trying to write things ourselves? I know, Ms. Cook, when I've listened to you talk, I've been impressed by how other people look at what you've done to adapt what they're going to be doing. But I also know that you look outside to look at best practices. So.
Absolutely, yeah.
One-word answer to a really long question. I like it. Thank you.
Commissioner Lycan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, Linda, Alert Me, is that the app?
Yes.
And the reason why I bring this up because it was interesting. A friend of mine is a nurse in Houston, the county hospital, and they have obviously a similar system. And what I didn't know until after the fact. So you saw pictures of the good old boys and girls out there at the boats going out and rescuing folks, right? Here's the reality. These folks were all high-tech folks who had systems on their phone. This wasn't by accident what they were out doing. They were actually helping law enforcement and the first responders. It wasn't by accident at all. In fact, it was really interesting to know how, first of all, you have a system like that set up. And how many times did we see folks going out, just ordinary people, going out and rescuing people from homes just like this, like you're talking about today? I mean, to me, that was impressive. And it turns out it was a system very similar, because once one gets an alert, they start forwarding on. If you have boats, if you have equipment, we need your help. Because first responders didn't have the equipment, but there's people there in Houston that did, willing to help out. And it was a system very similar to this. So I'm glad you mentioned this, because guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to sign up, because I have several apps that I've signed up with over the years that come and give me, and all of a sudden it just shows up just like that. So if something like this similar, because I'm the same as Commissioner Sorensen. We don't have a landline anymore, but yet it's amazing when you get these apps and you're signing up these apps, the information that you get comes, and it actually is fairly detailed. That's what I appreciate about it. It's not just some, here's a number, call this. It actually goes out and says, precaution, do this, do this. But the same thing happened in Houston. So folks had those apps, and they were able to forward it onto ordinary people who then said, where can we go to help? And it's one of the reasons why the fatality issue wasn't near as high as it could have been, because of that wonderful communication system that was put in place. By the way, I found it interesting. The hospital he works at, it was a county hospital, did not get flooded whatsoever, kept open the entire time. It was all, so you saw parts of Houston, but there was other parts of Houston that were dry. And it just depended on where you were, but it was devastating. And as we know, the same thing happened in Florida. And then, of course, we're seeing what's happening down in California with the slides. But I just thought that was interesting that he mentioned that something very similar. And it just took people forwarding it on to people they knew. And all of a sudden, you had this pretty good system in place from ordinary citizens helping first responders.
Kind of like Dunkirk.
Thank you.
May I comment?
Go ahead.
I'd like to just blend your comments with Commissioner Farr's comments about the idea of these facilities having plans, and is the county checking in to make sure they have plans. And when really all of this came to light after Hurricane Katrina in 2005, when they found that there were so many vulnerable populations left behind. And since that time, I've seen many iterations of planning efforts, and it started out with, we need all these facilities to register with the local fire departments and the dispatch centers so that we know where to go to find them. But what we're seeing is an evolution that you're speaking to, which basically is showing that the disaster is at the local level. We've heard that somewhat of in a cliche way over time, but it's proving to be more true than ever, where if you have a facility that's under duress of some sort, we've seen stories in the news where they have actually rescued people that are sitting in a wheelchair where the water is high as the arms of their wheelchair, because the woman in the chair was able to take a picture of what was happening in the facility, send it to her daughter. The daughter was able to alert people. So these kinds of networks are happening. They're organic. They emerge based on as the situation arises. And I can't say that Jocelyn is more right than she's already stated, that it's that proverbial it depends. And fortunately, technology is advancing to where we can adapt responses based on the needs of the situation.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I want to just clarify one thing. You mentioned Alert Sense, and then you mentioned Alert Me. And when I go to my app store and search for Alert Me, I get an app that's like $4.99 where alert's spelled with 2 T's. I don't think that's it, is it?
Okay, thank you for
I have
clarifying that.
One I have on my phone is called My Alerts.
Okay. Alert Sense is the system that we contract with as a third-party vendor. That's the name of the company. If you go to the Lane County website and you click on the Emergency Preparedness tab, you'll see a link that says sign up for Alert Me. So Alert Me is a bit of a marketing, branding that we've been
It's not an app in the App Store then?
Well, you can find Alert Sense in the App Store, but if you want to sign up for alerts from your local government, then you want to sign up for Alert Me, because that goes into the database that I actually can see, and I can open it up and see who's registered and who hasn't. Within that signing up, you can also check on boxes to receive alerts from the National Weather Service, whether you're interested in floods or tsunamis or windstorms.
Yeah, there's a free app, I think, at least through through Apple devices called Alert Me, or My Alerts, sorry, where you can get all the various weather service alerts and any sort of emergency broadcasting system alerts. I know for a fact, because I got woken up at 5 in the morning when I was in Hawaii, because they had a flash flood warning on part of Maui, and they hit the kind of panic button where it actually had the phone go, and half of our boat was like, what's going on? It didn't even apply to us. Fortunately, I was not in Hawaii recently for the other alert they got, so I didn't have to panic over that one. But I did, one of the things I found interesting was I have seen a lot of discussion on Facebook about the recent tsunami advisories that were issued for the West Coast. They weren't warnings. I wanted to make sure I use the right terminology. And a lot of people were like, well, I didn't hear about them. I didn't hear. It's like, I got them all. Because I've got this area identified as where I want my alerts to come from. And it also, if you have it set, it can also be whatever location you're at. So I've got this location as a fixed point in my alerts. But if I happen to be like I was in Hawaii, because the cell phone knew I was in Hawaii, I got those Hawaiian alerts too. So it was, really, really simple thing for folks to get is that little My Alerts app. And
I just signed
them up
as we're sitting here.
Yeah. So really easy thing to do, folks. Quick and easy program. Just have to have your location services on if you want your location to be available. I actually was the one that asked for this item to begin with, because I've got this sort of special place for resilience planning and emergency planning in my heart as a civil engineer. And I was curious because I did not know what the state of emergency planning was for nursing homes. I would just watch the videos from this summer and some of the flood events and hurricanes and thought, oh my gosh, are we prepared for that? Have we really thought about it? And then on top of that, I read this book called 1 Second After, which really scared the bejesus out of me about nursing homes, because one of the first fatalities happened in nursing homes and supposed to this disaster event. Fictional, but based on a lot of good science, and it was it just kind of really brought home that vulnerability. I'm really happy to see that there's actual federal rules that are going into place that are requiring this, and understanding now that the state is actually the authority over these facilities and are responsible for implementing those federal rules for the planning. That we're actually ahead of other states, which is like, woohoo! I won't have to see video after the next big disaster here, and we all know we're due for the Cascadia subduction zone. So it was my concern that we have this large, highly vulnerable population, 164 facilities. How many people is that? And that's a considerable amount of our population. And as we have an aging demographic, as was noted in our strategic planning, that's only going to get larger in our community. That demographic that's going to be under people's care and very vulnerable in a disaster event. And this federal regulations, that's great. The fact that there is a potential communication gap, I guess that's maybe where our role as maybe not the regulators and enforcers over this, but just as conveners and communicators, and as we talk about disaster preparedness in general. And I know, Linda, you do this constantly about people needing, we used to talk about, you needed to be prepared for 24 hours, and it became 72 hours. And now we're telling people a week, and now it's 2 weeks. It's moved on because we've gotten to understand in a really big disaster how long it really takes to get help, and the fact that there are going to be people that don't prepare at all. So if you have 2 weeks worth of preparation and your neighbor shows up with their 8-month-old baby, are you going to turn them away? And suddenly your 2 weeks became a week. And then your senior citizen neighbor on the other side of you that's in her 80s and has been a widower for quite a while comes over, and there you're down to your 72 hours we tell you about. So it's really about not just preparing for yourself, but that communication for these, that we can keep having with these facilities, and start that conversation and kind of just, urge them to prepare and start thinking about, what we can be doing to encourage closing that communication gap. What can we be doing to match maybe some of these facilities up with the local ham club and other other issues we might be able to do. That's really, where do you see, both as a public health issue and as an emergency preparedness issue, where we can kind of facilitate making sure that Lane County is not only, Oregon's maybe better prepared than other states. I'd like Lane County to be the most prepared county when it comes to these critical care facilities that have such a vulnerable population. Is there, what do you see moving forward we can keep doing to maybe promote that?
As I mentioned earlier, I see disasters and emergencies as local first. And for me, it's working with the non-governmental organizations that serve our most vulnerable populations. We have a coalition here in town called Community Organizations Assisting in Disaster, and it's comprised of a number of agencies that, as I mentioned, serve the most vulnerable in our communities. And to me, it's working with the agencies, whether they're the non-governmental organizations or senior disabled services through LCOG, whatever networks we can tap, give them the information and encourage them to be reaching out to their clientele, and also to be following up with their clientele when something happens, whether it's the frail elderly or the children or the homeless. We have agencies that are generally looking after these various populations, and so we want to work with those agencies and get them to take the charge with us.
Excellent. Thank you. Commissioner Sorensen.
I just want everyone to know it's not that hard to sign up for Lane County Alert Me, because I personally did it while this discussion was going.
Did you activate it though? You have to activate it too. So and
yeah,
you'll get an
they
email
sent me back
so.
a nice email saying,
Yep.
Thank you for joining.
Did either of you enter a P.O. box?
No.
It has to be associated with a physical address. We did have a lot of people enter their P.O. box. You won't get an alert if you do. And you won't get a FedEx delivery either.
To activate your profile, use the following link. So you got to do that too. You can't just get the email. You got to answer the email.
Yes.
So great. So obviously it's not hard to sign up for the Alert Sense through our Alert Me on our emergency preparedness so that's in the sheriff's page, right? So if I went to the sheriff's office and
well, when we updated the website, I think we did a great job countywide. You can go to the county's front page, and there's a tab there that says emergency preparedness. If you click on that tab, you'll see information from a variety of different departments.
So it's right on our front page. So you don't even have to go through all that other stuff.
LaneCounty.org, click on emergency preparedness, and it'll take you to the Alert Me.
Great.
And if you can't remember that, just search emergency and it goes right to it. So.
Okay, there you go. That too.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, I really appreciate you guys taking the time to do a little research on this, and I think it's a great conversation that we had just thinking back about last summer and fall. Really, I'm pleased to hear that we're kind of ahead of the curve, and we have federal law that's moving us even further along, and we've got great staff that's going to probably keep working to make us the best county in the state, the best state in the nation. So really appreciate your work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So moving on, we have item 9B, which is Order 1801-3007 in the matter of adding 4 full-time mental health associates, 1 full-time office assistant, 1 full-time office assistant 2, 1 full-time peer support specialist, and 1 full-time senior management analyst in Fund 286 within the Department of Health and Human Services. And we have Karen Gaffney, our director, and Carla Ayers, our Behavioral Health Division Manager. Welcome.
Good morning, Chair Bozovich and Commissioners. And I just wanted to do a time check. I know we had initially talked about 30 minutes for this item. Are you hoping to finish by noon, or? So
I don't have lunch plans, so I'm okay if we go over a little over, but I'll look at the rest of the board. I think we're, so don't feel rushed.
Excellent, and certainly we've allowed plenty of time for your discussion and questions as we move through this. Carla Ayers is going to do the bulk of our presentation this morning, but I just wanted to tee it up a little bit. It's an exciting opportunity for us to come and update you on the great work that's been happening at Lane County Behavioral Health. I know on many different agenda items, including the one this morning on the levy, we have an opportunity to reference that work, but until now we really haven't come back to you to both report on the progress since the performance auditor report identified some particular targets, and so we want to complete that feedback loop for you. But even more exciting from our perspective is to share with you where we're at on our transformation of our services, specifically at Lane County Behavioral Health, our mental health clinic, and then show you where we plan to go from here. So I promise I'm not going to steal more of Carla's thunder. I'm going to let her do that presentation, and then we'll take questions afterwards.
Good morning, Chair Bozovich and Commissioners, and I just really
pull the mic up. There you go.
Really wanted to start off with thanking you for all of your help and support at Lane County Behavioral Health and all the work that you do in the community. These are our amazing staff at last year's staff retreat. At the end of the retreat, we took our picture, and those are all the folks that are providing all the great services in the county.
Wow.
So our first slide is about access, quality, and sustainability, which has been our focus at Lane County Behavioral Health under the Transformation Project. These are the numbers of individuals that we're currently serving in our programs, and that we've also included the total number of services that we provided in 2017. So for the Lane County program, it's over 40,000 services, and for the methadone treatment program, over 38,000. So why transformation? The transformation project was initiated in December of 2014 because the clinic was in debt, staff morale was low, and access was limited. And I'm sure you remember those days. With your help, we focused on improving the clinic and created a sustainable access for our county's citizens. We focused on strong and supportive leadership, implemented trauma-informed care, increased our school-based health center behavioral health, as well as creating a functional access system. The clinic is financially strong. So these are the challenges that the clinic faced pre-transformation. Back in 2012, we were really providing an isolated, like private practice model of service. We lacked a linear access system, and we had archaic technology for our electronic health record. We've since then updated that, and the good news about that is, I don't know if you've ever implemented a new computer system and the challenges that you face with that. It was like going from a Nokia to a Nokia flip phone to an iPhone X. So that was how we experienced that. We had some very challenging budget deficits, but times have changed and we are in a much better place today. From 2015 to 2017, we've hired new staff, including peer supports, very limited case management, and our medical assistants. We've also filled 3 very critical leadership positions, one of which was a peer support supervisor, a nursing supervisor, and a medical director. We developed our access team. We're using evidence-based risk assessment, as well as our gambling and substance abuse screening practices. So our goals over the next 3 years will be to continue to provide more access to the community by serving an additional 300 people by December of 2020, maintaining our continuous quality improvement, and continuing to build our financial reserve. This slide you might be somewhat familiar with. It was in your packet. I don't want to spend a lot of time on it, but I think it's really important for you to be able to see our vision and where we want to go from here. The red dots that you see at each phase, so it's a 4-phase process. We're currently in the 2nd phase, and our goal is to really evaluate each phase. So we want to look at clinical consistencies, efficiencies, access for the community, and ensure that we are rolling out workflows to the best of our ability with that, so that when we move to the next phase, we know we're ready to move forward. This is okay, so I lost my spot. This is the part of the reason that we're presenting to you today. We've successfully completed our 1st phase of transformation and will need a few additional positions in order to move forward. We're hopeful that we can receive 4 case managers, the 1 office assistant, and 1 peer support, as well as a senior management analyst. And the reason for that is the case management positions will be part of our multidisciplinary teams. So our goal is to have everybody working at the top of their license, and we don't want clinicians who are doing individual therapy doing case management. We really want them to be meeting with individuals in their offices while we have case managers providing that resource connection, collaboration, family meetings, paperwork, getting signed up for housing, really doing all of the other pieces of the work. So it's very critical for those positions. Okay. All right. In developing our continuous quality improvement goals for 2018, we considered Lane County's strategic plan, H&Hs's strategic plan, as well as our performance audit and the Oregon performance plan. And these are the goals that we've identified, which will probably look similar to you in that part of these were from the performance audit. And we've done a lot of work on them, and we still have more work to complete. On January 10th, you heard from Mike Barnhart and Ron Jelm, who talked about the Federally Qualified Health Center's 5-year Performa plan, and LCBH was a part of that plan. As part of the transformation, we've created linear access, treatment, and discharge. This is important because it keeps the clinic moving efficiently and ensuring the citizens can get access to Lane County Behavioral Health Services quickly, while also ensuring that we stay financially secure. The key metrics we monitor to ensure financial sustainability are monthly productivity, caseload sizes, admissions and discharges, no-show rates, and inactive consumers, insurance statuses, and expenditures. This monitoring assures that we are keeping track of all the important elements that create a financially sound clinic. Now, this is a graph that shows our productivity in encounters, so basically fee-for-service structure, over the last 4 years. We've continued to increase our capacity and provide services to the community. Our 2018 number is projected because we haven't completed that yet. All right, we've worked with human resources. So this is around a lot of the performance audit work that we have done. We've worked with human resources to streamline our retention and hiring practices. We've decreased our vacancy rates by 50%, which is huge. We are currently working with Trillium Behavioral Health on alternative payment methods. And we continue to increase our coordination efforts within the community. There are a couple of items that we've been able to utilize in this process. So we currently have accessed and implemented a system called Pre-Manage. And what that allows us to do is communicate more effectively with the behavioral health unit so that we get notification when somebody's in the emergency room and we can start quickly coordinating with that person. So there's no lack in time of us getting that information. That's been incredibly helpful. And we also implemented our new electronic health record, which allows us to have real data in real time, and also better integration between us and the community health centers. We're on the same system. So our data collection has improved dramatically. I want to say thank you very much for your time and all the work that you do, and we've really appreciated your support and help. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
And Chair Bozievich, if I can just add a couple comments before we go to your questions. First of all, I just want to hugely thank Carla for her leadership out at Lane County Behavioral Health. The work that Carla, her leadership team, and all of the staff have done out there to truly transform our behavioral health work has been tremendous, and not only good for us as the county, but really the beneficiaries of that have been the people who live in this community and who've been able to access mental health services in a way that they never had before. We relied early on some great consulting from the Mental Health Center of Denver, which is one of the premier community mental health programs in the country, and really helped us draw the map for how we would work our way through this transformation piece. And that early slide, Carla talked about access, quality, and sustainability. And so those 3 points on our triangle are important. Access means that we can get people into service. And so Carla showed you those specific numbers, and part of our work in expanding these teams of practitioners is really designed to be able to make sure we get people in the door who need our services and get them in as quickly as possible. So that's the access piece. Quality is important to us because that's the only way we really make a difference. And another time, we'd love to come back and share with you some of our business intelligence software and other data work that we've put in place in the last year or so that will help us really gauge that quality piece as we move forward. And then obviously sustainability. Carla showed you the graphs on the financial piece. As you all know, the public may not remember that Lane County Behavioral Health gets very little county general fund. You fund investigator, a very important position for us in terms of commitment investigation, but the rest of the clinic is really funded through the revenue that we're able to generate by billing insurance and writing grants and through our state contracts. So we want to make sure that we build a program that's sustainable into the future to serve people in this community. And absolutely, we've been watching the numbers carefully and are confident that these positions that we're requesting today are sustainable and will really help build that foundation that continues our work into the future. So, thank you.
Thank you. And I know Commissioner Farr is going to have something to say about that.
No.
Go ahead, Commissioner.
I have a lot to say, much more that can be said in just a few minutes, but I just really, it's evident to everybody who looks at our system from outside that it's a system that is working and moving forward. The only question I have, Mr. Chair, is regarding space. We continually need to, we're adding caseworkers, we're adding specialists. Can you talk a little bit about space? Without, belaboring the issue, we do know we need more space. More space equals more professionals, equals more billing, equals more people served, equals greater results. So space.
Yes, Chair Bozovich and Commissioner Farr, I'm not sure this is where I wanted the county administrator to hear this, but we were talking yesterday about a capital improvement plan and really looking at what are those space needs out into the future and beginning to put pen to paper on those. Carla would be the first to remind us that when Pivot Architecture designed our facility, our Lane County Mental Health Building, it was designed with the ability to add an extra wing to that building. So I think as Carla tucks money away into reserves, I think that's one of the things on her long-term plan is as we build this program and look towards space, that is one option, is to look at expansion of that building.
And I'd like to point out, Ms. Smokowski, that was a renegade question. I didn't, that was from me strictly. But, that being said, our Poverty and Homelessness Board has identified behavioral health as a significant issue regarding expenditure of resources that are not spent in our mental health department. The FUSE system, frequent user system engagement that we're engaged in, is identifying people who need different kinds of assistance. And a large part of that, of course, is residential. And it wouldn't be, I would be missing a opportunity if I didn't talk about residential and talk about Operation 600, which is our goal to provide 600 behavioral health supportive residential units between now and 2021. We're moving down the road, but the more we can think about that, the more people can think about the innovative ways that we're going to provide that. Because if the MLK facility does happen, and I've sworn to myself every single morning when I look in the mirror that it will happen, a large part of that is going to be specifically providing some space to give services to people who otherwise may not get the service. Now, it's not about billing, although billing is a part of it, and it's not about adding more staff, but adding more staff is a part of it. It's about taking care of the people that need specialized services, and that is what you're doing. And the only frustrating thing to me about it is that we need to do more, we can do more, and we have an eye on doing more. And it's just a matter of getting everybody on board to make sure that we can get you the resources, the space resources that you need to make it happen. So it's a long discussion, more than 3 minutes before noon, and it's something that we engage in on a regular basis. Ms. Gaffney, I talk to you at least once a month in your office or in my office where we talk about what are the plans and what are we excited about. And it always comes back to behavioral health services. So I had a chance to ask you about the mental health summit this morning. Most people don't know about that, but where the jail captain and the sheriff and the DA and people from throughout the entire county sit in one room and talk about how do we maximize our behavioral health services. And you've got it right here. The required positions will be funded through a combination of billing revenue as well as mental health investment, jail diversion, and Oregon Criminal Justice Commission grant funds. So just bravo. We've got 4 full-time assistants, 4 mental health associates, 1 regular full-time office assistant, and 1 regular full-time peer support specialist. So as we move down the road, obviously, having people able to work, a term I learned from, I'm not sure which one of you guys taught me this, people working at the top of the licensure. So people doing the work that only they can do, whereas other work that other people can do. We're getting people in place to do that. And a part of this that we're authorizing today does exactly that. It gives office assistance and it gives peer support, which is allowing people who are licensed to be a psychiatrist to work as a psychiatrist, people who are licensed to be a mental health specialist to work as a mental health specialist. Right. So bravo for maximizing resources and bravo for moving us forward. Thank you.
Commissioner Lycan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And first of all, thank you for bringing this to the board because I strongly support, and I think this is fantastic. A couple things. I mean, first of all, I want to look at this, and especially when you're focusing on the behavior mental health issue. I mean, we saw the, not only in Lane County, but the state of Oregon, the high rate of youth suicide. It's just very disturbing to me. I still can't get my arms around that. And ever since I saw that presentation, not only here, but our AOC meeting, it has really bothered me. And so when I look at this and think to myself, okay, you know, if one of these individuals helps with one youth, you've already done your job. That's how I look at it. The question I have is that, so we have our federally qualified healthcare clinics. So can an individual who goes to the clinics, can they get a mental or behavioral health consult at the clinics, or is it only at Charlton, or how does that work?
Sure, I'd be happy to talk about that. So for the behavioral, I think at both facilities, people can get that option. Yeah. The CHCs now have the IBH folks. I'm doing alphabet soup. Sorry about that.
That's right. I know a few of your acronyms.
Okay. Good. So they have that opportunity there for the CHCs. If they need longer services, then they will refer them to us. So they have a direct admit to our organization to get those services. Our services, absolutely, anybody's able to come and get that behavioral health consult and that support.
Commissioner Lycan, I would also, it's an opportunity since you're talking about young people in our community. Carla also has some of her staff in the child and adolescent team who are outstationed at school-based health centers, which I think is another fabulous opportunity for us to be out in the community where kids are.
And to kind of tack on to that too, just so we implemented the Columbia Suicide Severity Rating Scale, which is an evidence-based tool shown to reduce the rates of suicide in communities. When I attended the National Council on Behavioral Health a year ago, they were doing a presentation on it and talking about it. So we immediately took that and brought it here to our community. We've gotten several almost 300 people in Lane County that are providers trained in utilizing that tool, hopefully to address exactly what you're talking about, because it is horrible and we do need to do something about it. So we're working on it. We're trying.
Well, and unfortunately, economics and other areas have shown that it doesn't matter. And we saw that firsthand, unfortunately, with Tyler Hilinski, the quarterback from Washington State, expected to be the next starter next year, and for some reason, which we don't know at this point in time, decided to take his own life at 21 years old. And you're looking at this going, wait a minute. And you don't know what's going on the inside. But from the outside, it looked like he had the world at his hands. So this is why I just think this is fantastic, and I appreciate it. And thanks for answering the question on our CHCs, because they're the first point of contact for our citizens is there. And so knowing that they can get that initial consult at the very beginning can be so helpful. So I thank you for this great work and really appreciate it.
Thank you.
So I'll just try not to keep us too much later, but I just want to say, I really appreciate the work that you guys are doing with this transformation. And it's nice to see also the performance audit get wrapped into this. And in particular, we're seeing positions added right where the audit said we needed them, which was case management. And when we look at some of the issues we're dealing with in the county, intensive case management is really what's needed. And having those extra positions, one, it relieves that allows the practitioners to practice at their highest license capabilities, but also that's really such an integral part about helping people out, is to have that a lot of hands-on case management, connecting them with other services, the integration of all those services. And that's really about case management. It's not necessarily about having somebody that has, an MD and a psychiatry, fellowship like my sister or my stepdad. It's about, just having somebody that listens, understands all the other issues going on in a person's life that are distracting them from dealing with maybe an underlying behavioral health issue, and connecting them with the services that maybe relieve some of those other stresses, housing, food, child care, all those various things that a case manager may help with, that allows a person maybe to focus on an anger management issue or a post-traumatic stress issue, or depression leading to suicidal thoughts. All those things that is so hard to focus on doing the hard internal work of making yourself better when you're still stressed by so much external stuff, and it's shown how beneficial that is. I mean, there's study after study that shows how beneficial intensive case management and supported housing works. Our FUSE program, our initial pilot, is showing huge drop in utilization of the system when we do connect with these people with intensive case management. So bravo for that. And I just want to say, you guys are doing great work. And I really appreciate the work you're doing. We do have a board order in front of us, though, so I was...
Well, actually, before the board order, Mr. Chair, I don't believe it's necessary, but I will declare a potential conflict of interest. My son works for Lane County Behavioral Health as a mental health specialist. These are new positions that don't address existing positions. So that being the case, I believe I'm all right in making the motion for the order.
Yes, I believe so.
And that will be, I move passage of order number 1801-30-07 in the matter of adding 4 full-time mental health associates, 1 full-time office assistant, 1 full-time peer support specialist, and 1 full-time senior management analyst within the Department of Health and Human Services.
Second.
It's moved by Commissioner Farr, seconded by Commissioner Sorensen. Any discussion to the motion? Commissioner Sorensen.
Hey, thanks so much for this presentation today. I really enjoyed seeing that progression, the number of visits. I believe that was the 32,000 projected for FY 18 that we're in, that we're finishing, 17 that we're finishing, excuse me. In terms of services not being provided, do you have any estimate of what that would be if we do achieve the 32,000 in this fiscal year? Is that a third of what's out there? Is that 5% of what's out there? Is that 90% of what's out there?
That's a really good question. I think I would want to look at the data a little more before answering and make sure that I give you accurate information.
Could you just email the board and say,
absolutely.
It's 50, it's 30, it's 90?
Yep.
Or with 4 digits after the decimal point, whatever you're comfortable with in terms of the data. The data changes all the time.
Yes.
So.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Any other discussion to the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Bozovich.
All right, so seeing we're past noon, with the consent of the board, I'd like to move administration announcements and the commissioner's business to after our public works items this afternoon. Is that okay with everybody?
Yes.
With that, then, we are going to recess until 1:30.